My parents took $20,000 from retirement for my sister, then tried to hike my rent, so I moved out and left them to handle her mess alone. I'm an ordinary 25-year-old who worked hard to graduate from college and get my first job as an elementary school teacher. It's not a high-paying position, but I enjoy dealing with children, so it's worthwhile. Still, money is tight, especially when you're just starting out. That's why I've been living with my parents in the suburban house where I grew up. It's not the most fascinating configuration, but it is functional. They charge me a decent rent, as my father would say, and I buy my own groceries. In addition, when Dad broke his back last summer, I helped with jobs such as mowing the grass, fixing things around the house, and even cleaning out the garage. It is not glamorous, but it is only transitory. My objective was to stay for a few years, save money, and eventually get my own place. Simple, right? It was straightforward until my older sister Brielle re-entered the picture. Brielle is 32, and to put it simply, she has never been the responsible type. She was the best behaved child growing up. I'm not sure if it was because she was the firstborn, or if our parents simply liked her, but she could do no wrong in their eyes. She dropped out of college twice. The first time she wasn't motivated. The second time she complained that the lecturers were overly demanding. She's never held a job for more than a few months. When things didn't go her way, she'd resign and make up an excuse about how it wasn't her fault. Our parents constantly helped her out. Are you late on your rent? They would pay for it. Did your car break down? They'd cover the fix. Have you received a speeding ticket? Mom would write the check, mumbling about how the police target young ladies. Meanwhile, I was cleaning toilets at a diner to save money for college and taking out loans to pay for school. Brielle had been living on her own for the previous few years, or so I assumed. It turned out she'd been bouncing between apartments, constantly overdue on rent, and relying on our parents to keep her afloat. I had no idea about this until she walked up one day and casually disclosed her pregnancy. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on anyone's life choices, but let's just say Brielle's circumstances were far from stable. The kid's father was a guy she'd been dating for a few months, and from what I could tell, he wasn't very happy about the surprise pregnancy. He basically vanished as soon as she told him. You'd think Brielle would take this as a wake-up call, right? Perhaps this was the moment she realized she needed to organize her life. But no. Instead, she ran directly to Mom and Dad, who immediately went into repair mode. Within a week, they began renovating the basement to make it into a little apartment for her. They even installed a kitchenette. I didn't ask where the money was coming from, but I overheard Mom mention tapping into their retirement savings. I tried to stay out of it because, frankly, it wasn't my concern. They could choose to throw money at Brielle, but the truth is, I could already see the writing on the wall. My parents have a habit of bringing everyone else into Brielle's difficulties. It's as if they believe we all have to join together to help her, regardless of how big of a disaster she's created. At first, I assured myself that it wouldn't bother me. Brielle's small apartment was being built in the basement, giving her her own space. I assumed she'd move in, do her thing, and I'd continue on with my life. It was a little frustrating to see everyone bend over backwards for her again, but I tried not to focus on it. That mindset was effective for roughly 2 months, then tiny things began to pile up. First, Mom started telling me that I should spend more time with Brielle because she was going through so much, despite the fact that I was working full-time and came home weary most days. Then began the subtle guilt trips. Mom would say things like, "You know Brielle doesn't have anyone else to lean on right now. It's so hard being pregnant and single." She'd do this while looking directly at me as if I was meant to miraculously cure all of Brielle's issues. Dad wasn't doing much better. He would find ways to incorporate Brielle into every conversation. "You should be grateful for everything you have, Riley," he'd add as he passed the salt during supper. "Not everyone's as lucky as you." Fortunately, I was barely getting by, trying to create a career while saving money. Meanwhile, Brielle was given a completely refurbished flat, as well as unending emotional and financial assistance. But things escalated when I overheard Mom and Dad talking one night. They were in the living room, and I was in the kitchen, making tea. "She's going to need a lot of help once the baby comes," she remarked. "Of course," Dad responded. "We'll all pitch in." "All?" Mom inquired. "Well, you, me, and Riley," Dad stated, as if it were clear. I almost dropped my mug. They hadn't told me anything about this plan, but it was evident they had already determined I would be a part of it. That's when I started feeling apprehensive. I didn't know the specifics yet, but I could tell they were working on something that would drag me into Brielle's mess, whether I liked it or not. Brielle's frequent visits exacerbated the unpleasant sensation. She'd collapse onto the couch, whining about how difficult it was to be pregnant and how terrible it was that her ex had left. She'd make passing remarks about how fortunate I was to have a stable job and no children to worry about. I bit my tongue every time since I didn't want to spark an argument. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, why does this always fall on me? By dinner time that night, I had a horrible feeling that something was about to happen. I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew it wouldn't be good. When we sat down to supper, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen. You know when everyone is acting too casual, like if they are all keeping a secret from you? That is how it felt. Mom and Dad were conversing about random topics regarding the neighbor's new fence while Brielle was going through her phone. It felt forced, as if they were waiting for the proper time to dump something on me. Dinner was spaghetti, which is my father's go-to, we need to have a family talk food. I'm not sure why. It's not as if spaghetti makes terrible news easier to digest. I tried to concentrate on my plate and not overthink things, but around midway through the dinner, Mom cleared her throat. "So, we've been thinking," she said, looking at Dad. I froze. Nothing good ever comes from those words. "With Brielle moving back home, she's going to need some help," Mom said, her tone too kind. "What exactly do you need help with?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a neutral tone. Dad jumped in before she could respond. "With the baby, of course. Brielle's got a lot on her plate right now, and it's going to be hard for her to manage everything on her own." I looked across at Brielle, who was still scrolling through her phone as if this topic had nothing to do with her. She did not even look up. "Okay, but what does that have to do with me?" I inquired, setting down my fork. My parents exchanged one of those expressions, as if they were trying to find out how to frame whatever they were going to say. "Well," my mom said, "you're already living here, and you're so good with kids being a teacher and all. We thought it made sense for you to help with babysitting." "Help?" I asked again, lifting an eyebrow. Dad nodded warmly. "Yeah, just keep an eye on the baby while Brielle gets back on her feet. It wouldn't be full-time or anything. Just when you're home." I couldn't believe what I heard. "You want me to babysit a newborn on top of working full-time?" "Well, you're home for 3 more days," Mom pointed out. "And you're not paying market rent," Dad said, as if that were relevant. I glanced at them, trying to understand what they were asking. They weren't just asking for a little assistance. They expected me to take on an entire second job for free. "Wait, let me get this straight," I murmured, leaning back in my chair. "You want me to come home from teaching all day and then take care of Brielle's baby?" Mom sighed, as if I was being difficult on purpose. "It's not like that, Riley. We're all going to pitch in." "All?" I repeated. "Yes," Dad answered. "We're all family, and family helps each other." At that point, Brielle looked up from her phone. "Wow, Riley," she exclaimed, smirking. "I didn't realize helping your sister was such a big deal for you." I felt my hands twist into fists beneath the table. I didn't want to snap, but the entitlement in her voice was too much. "It's not about that," I replied. "I have my own life, my own job. I can't just drop everything to babysit." "You're being selfish," Mom started with a harsh tone. Brielle's going through a really hard time right now. The least you can do is help her out. Why is it my responsibility to fix her choices? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. She's 32 years old. She's not a kid anymore. Brielle gave me a, "Are you kidding me? Look, that's enough," Dad remarked, his voice stern. "We're all in this together, whether you like it or not. You're living under our roof, and we expect you to contribute." "Family," I answered. "I pay rent. I buy my own groceries. I help with chores. How is that not enough?" The room went silent for a time, and I could feel the tension in the air. Brielle merely sat there complacent, as if she had already won. "Well," Mom replied, "if you're not willing to help, maybe we need to rethink your living arrangement." My stomach sank. "Are you threatening to kick me out?" "Of course not," Mom replied hastily. "But if you're not willing to contribute more, maybe we need to discuss raising your rent." I couldn't believe what I heard. I had done everything I could to be a good renter, if you can call it that, and now they were trying to guilt me into taking on duties that were not mine. "You're seriously going to do this?" I questioned, my voice shaking. "You're going to punish me for not wanting to be Brielle's free nanny." "It's not punishment," Dad explained. "It's about being part of the family. It's about you two enabling Brielle like you always have," I replied, rising from the table. "And now you're trying to drag me into it." "Don't talk about your sister like that," Mom yelled. "I'm done," I said, turning towards the stairs. "You want to help Brielle? Fine, but leave me out of it." I raced upstairs and shut the door to my room, my heart thumping against my chest. I could not believe what had just occurred. I had always known my parents preferred Brielle, but this was a whole other level. It seemed like it was about control. They intended to keep me under their roof so they could coerce me into doing whatever they wanted. The most memorable aspect of the conversation for me was Brielle's smug expression. She barely said anything and sat there browsing through her phone as if nothing was wrong. And I suppose in her opinion, it wasn't. Mom and Dad were already going out of their way to appease her, and now they were attempting to bring me into it as well. I don't think I slept for more than a few hours that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the conversation in my thoughts, remembering everything I should have said but didn't. I was still upset when my alarm went off the next morning, but I also felt trapped. I couldn't just leave. I considered packing up my belongings and getting my own home, but it wasn't that simple. I was only a few months into my teaching profession and still attempting to save money. Rent in the neighborhood was too expensive, and I couldn't afford to live alone on my wage. The next few days were tense at home. Mom and Dad were definitely upset with me, but instead of discussing it, they started making passive-aggressive comments. "Must be nice to have so much free time after work," Mom commented one evening as I stepped through the door. "Yeah, some people don't have that luxury," Dad explained, barely glancing up from his newspaper. I ignored them and walked directly to my room. At this time, I was not interested in disputing. I knew that anything I said would only make matters worse, and I didn't have the energy to deal with it. Brielle, meantime, was living her best life. She hadn't even moved in yet she was there virtually every day, filling the living room with her belongings and acting as if she already owned the home. She'd leave her shoes on the couch, her handbag on the dining table, and odd shopping bags strewn about like it was no great deal. I got home one night to find her on the couch, eating ice cream and watching a reality show. She didn't even recognize me when I entered. She looked up, gave me a half-hearted "hey," and returned to her TV. I stood there for a second, hoping for her to say something else, either an apology or simply a thank you for not freaking out about the situation. But nothing. I walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and discovered that half of my groceries were missing. What about the bread I bought? Gone. What about yogurt? Gone. Even my leftovers from the night before were gone. Did you eat my food? I questioned, returning to the living room. Brielle did not even look up. Mom said I could, she said between bites of ice cream. She's not the one who paid for it, I snapped. Brielle eventually turned to face me and rolled her eyes. Chill out, Riley, it's just food. It's my food, I replied, my voice rising. If you want groceries, go buy your own. Geez, you don't have to be such a drama queen, Brielle replied, placing her bowl on the coffee table. You're acting like I stole your car or something. I did not know what to say. I just stood there angry while Brielle grabbed her phone and began messaging someone, completely ignoring me again. I wanted to yell at her for being entitled and selfish, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Brielle had spent her entire life getting away with this kind of conduct because Mom and Dad allowed it, and now they were attempting to make me part of the problem. The next morning, Mom cornered me in the kitchen as I was preparing coffee. You need to apologize to your sister, she replied sternly. For what? I inquired, honestly perplexed. For making her feel unwelcome, Mom stated, crossing her arms. She's going through so much right now, and the last thing she needs is you being difficult. Are you serious? I asked, turning to face her. She ate all my food and acted like it was no big deal. How is that my fault? Mom sighed as if I were the one acting unreasonable. It's just food, Riley. You can always buy more. That's not the point, I responded, attempting to keep my voice steady. The point is that she doesn't respect anyone's boundaries and you're letting her get away with it. Boundaries? Mom asked, practically scoffing. This is her home now, too. You need to learn how to share. At that point, I realized I couldn't reason with her. Mom wasn't interested in hearing my side of the story. She just wanted me to conform and do what was best for the family. Over the next week, things deteriorated. Mom and Dad began hinting that if I didn't step up, they would hike my rent. Brielle continued to move more of her belongings into the house, filling the basement with furniture and boxes. She even started using my bathroom because the one below didn't work well. I tried to keep my distance, but it seemed that no matter what I did, they were all out to lure me into their mess. One night I came home to find Dad in the living room, holding what appeared to be a financial worksheet. We need to talk, he continued, motioning for me to sit down. I hesitated, but eventually sat on the edge of the couch, bracing myself for what would come next. We've been looking at the numbers, Dad said, tapping the paper with his pen. And with Brielle moving in, expenses are going up. We think it's only fair for you to contribute more. You're already charging me rent, I responded. How much more do you want? Dad shrugged. We're still figuring that out. But if you're not willing to help with the baby, this seems like the best solution. I couldn't believe what I heard. They were literally attempting to use my rent as leverage to get me to babysit. This is ridiculous, I exclaimed, standing up. I'm already paying more than enough for what I get here. If you want me to leave, just say so. No one's asking you to leave, Dad responded hurriedly. We're just asking you to do your part. My part, I repeated. You mean Brielle's part? Dad opened his lips to react, but I did not allow him the opportunity. I walked out of the room and directly into my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. At that time, I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't stay living in a place where my boundaries were ignored, and my parents treated me like cheap labor. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing for certain. I needed to get away. That thought lingered with me, becoming louder every time Brielle waltzed through the home as if she owned it, or Mom and Dad tried to pressure me into helping. But wanting to leave and really doing it were two very different things. I didn't have much saved, but not enough to comfortably buy my own house, and the prospect of abruptly uprooting my life seemed overwhelming. Still, I realized that staying was not an option. If I let them push me into becoming Brielle's backup parent now, it would never end. They just keep piling more and more on me until I was stuck. I didn't want to wake up 5 years later in that house, unhappy and bitter. The next morning, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down with my computer. I opened a spreadsheet to manage my budget, which included rent, groceries, petrol, and school debts. I wasn't a terrific saver, but I did set aside some money every month. I tallied everything up and realized I could afford to move if I found somewhere cheap and cut up on luxuries for a bit. The timing could not have been better. My coworker Harper indicated a few weeks ago that she was seeking a roommate. I hadn't given it much attention at the time, but now it feels like a lifeline. I sent her a text, "Hey, is that roommate thing still an option?" She very quickly responded, "Yep, still looking. Why? Are you interested?" "Yeah, maybe. Can we talk after work?" Harper's reaction was brief and simple. "Of course." That afternoon, I stayed late at school, waiting until the halls were quiet before entering Harper's classroom. She was sitting at her desk, grading papers. "What's up?" she inquired, glancing up from her stack of writings. I paused for a second, unsure how much to share. At last, I responded, "I'm thinking about moving out of my parents' place. They're making things complicated." Harper nodded as if she knew without me having to explain. "The offer is still open," she explained. "It's not a big place, but it's clean, and we'd split everything down the middle. Rent's $800 a month, utilities included." That was slightly higher than I had hoped for, but it was manageable. "When would you need someone to move in?" I asked you. "Yesterday," she said, adding, "but seriously, anytime. If you're in, the room's yours." I promised her I'd let her know by the end of the week, but my mind was already made up. This was my way out. Then I had to find out how to leave without causing any more fuss. If my folks learned about my plan too soon, I knew they'd try to undermine it. They'd guilt me, quarrel with me, and possibly even raise my rent immediately to prevent me from saving anything. So I stayed quiet. I began packing gradually, focusing on staples, clothing, personal items, and everything I couldn't afford to replace. I kept everything in the trunk of my car, hidden under a blanket in case anyone was curious. At the same time, I began documenting everything, just in case. I photographed my room, my furniture, and my equipment, anything that could become a source of controversy later. I knew from experience that Brielle had a habit of forgetting who owned what, and I didn't want to lose my belongings in the confusion of leaving. One night, while everyone was sleeping, I printed up a letter formally delivering my 30-day notice. I'd done some online research and discovered that, while I wasn't exactly a tenant in the legal sense, it was still a good idea to get everything in writing. The last thing I wanted was for them to accuse me of leaving without warning. I didn't get much sleep that night, continuously checking the clock and listening for any sounds that could indicate someone was awake. Finally, at 6 a.m., I slipped the envelope under the door to my parents' bedroom. The reaction was quick. When I arrived home from work that day, Mom and Dad were waiting for me in the living room. "What's this?" Dad questioned, holding up the letter as if it were a personal attack. "It's my notice," I said in a firm voice. "You're really doing this?" Mom inquired, her voice already trembling. "Yes," I replied forcefully. "I found a place and I'll be moving out by the end of the month." "You can't just leave," Mom explained. "What about Brielle? What about the baby?" I took a deep breath and tried to remain cool. Brielle and the baby aren't my responsibility. I've done everything I can to help around here, but I can't keep living like this. "What's wrong with you?" Dad asked, his voice rising. "You weren't stubborn like this before. We've given you so much letting you live here, helping you get on your feet, and this is how you repay us." I clenched my fists and held back the temptation to roar. "I pay rent," I responded with gritted teeth. "I buy my own food. I've been responsible for myself since the day I graduated. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not your backup plan for Brielle." Mom began crying. which did not surprise me. She would always cry when things didn't go her way. "How can you do this to us?" she cried. "To your sister?" I did not say anything. I realized there was no point. They wouldn't listen, and I was not going to change my views. The days that followed were among the most embarrassing of my life. Mom and Dad hardly spoke to me except for the occasional guilt trip. Brielle pretended nothing had changed and continued to take over the house as if it were already hers. I returned home one night to find that she had relocated more of her belongings into the basement, putting boxes on top of the couch and pushing clothes into the closet. She seemed to be staking her territory, claiming every inch of available space. "Hope you don't mind," she said as I stepped in. I did not respond. I simply went upstairs and shut the door to my room, ignoring the knot of rage swelling in my chest. In the final days before my move, I stepped up my preparations. I packed the last of my belongings, double-checked my budget, and made arrangements with Harper to pick up the keys. Everything was coming into place, yet I still had a nagging feeling of worry. The worst thing was the morning I officially moved out. I'd arranged for Harper to stop by with her car, and we'd pick up the remaining of my belongings before traveling to her place. I thought I'd planned it precisely so that Brielle would still be asleep and Mom and Dad would be too preoccupied with their morning chores to notice me. Of course, nothing ever goes as easily in my family. I was halfway through moving boxes to my car when I heard my father's slippers shuffling down the hallway. He emerged at the top of the stairs. "What are you doing?" he demanded. I did not stop moving. "I told you I'm leaving today," I muttered, taking another box and heading out the door. "You can't just sneak out like this," he exclaimed, following me outside. "We're a family, Riley. Are you abandoning your own family?" I placed the package in the trunk of my car and turned to face him. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I responded calmly. "I'm choosing to live my own life. There's a difference." Dad appeared to want to quarrel, but before he could say anything, Mom arrived at the doorway, arms crossed and tears flowing down her cheeks. "You're really doing this?" she questioned, her voice cracking. "Yes," I replied, firmly keeping my stance. "What about Brielle?" she asked, sobbing. "What about the baby?" I sighed, feeling the weight of the conversation bear down on me. "Mom, I've told you before that Brielle and the baby aren't my problem. I can't keep sacrificing my own life to fix her mistakes." That set her off. "How dare you talk about your sister like that?" she demanded, her voice rising. "She's doing the best she can." I said, "Is she?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like she's just waiting for everyone else to do the work for her." Brielle appeared from the basement, disheveled but alert. She smirked as she watched the scenario develop in the driveway. "Don't worry, Mom," she added, her voice full of cynicism. "If Riley wants to be selfish, let her. We don't need her anyway." I clenched my fists, resisting the temptation to strike back. Instead, I looked at Harper, who had just arrived in her car. "Let's get this done," I murmured, disregarding the commotion behind me. Harper offered me a compassionate look before starting to assist me move the rest of my belongings into the cars. My parents continued to quarrel in the background, using every guilt trip they could think of. "Who's going to help us now?" Dad exclaimed. "How can you be so heartless?" Mom cried. Brielle, meanwhile, leaned against the doorframe, observing everything as if it were a live play for her entertainment. By the time we finished loading everything, I felt like I had run a marathon. I stood in the driveway, taking one last look at the house I had lived in for so many years. It should have been a bittersweet moment, but instead I felt relieved. With that, I started the engine and drove away, Harper following closely behind. I felt immediate comfort when I parked into Harper's apartment complex. It was not fancy, but it was clean, peaceful, and, most importantly, free of drama. Harper assisted me in carrying everything inside, and I was unpacked and established into my new room in less than an hour. We sat on the couch afterward and talked about work. It felt normal, like a peek of the life I'd missed while trapped in the midst of my family's turmoil. But the tranquility lasted barely approximately 2 hours. My phone started vibrating non-stop with calls, texts, and voicemails. It was my parents, aunts, and cousins. My mother had apparently already spread the word that I had abandoned the family, and everyone had an opinion on the matter. "Riley, how could you do this to your sister?" One voicemail from my Aunt Denise began. "She's pregnant and vulnerable. Don't you care about your family?" "Selfish doesn't even begin to describe you," another text from a cousin said. The worst aspect was Brielle's social media posts. She had gone into full victim mode, posting images of her baby belly with remarks like, "Some people would rather run away than help their own family. At least my baby will know what real love looks like." I blocked her immediately. It was infuriating, but I refused to let it draw me back in. I reminded myself that this was exactly why I'd left. To avoid the manipulation and drama that came with being a part of my family. The following week at work, things became more crazier. My mother arrived at school during my lunch break, crying and demanding to speak with me. She was in complete meltdown mode, ranting about how I had wrecked the family and how Brielle was breaking apart without me. My principal had to intervene and ask her to leave, which was embarrassing. I spent the rest of the day avoiding eye contact with everyone, knowing they were undoubtedly wondering about the family drama I was involved in. But the situation actually worked in my favor. I thought I was over the house and all the drama it brought, but life isn't that simple. About 2 weeks later, I realized I had left behind some vital documents, including my teaching credential, tax forms, and other work-related paperwork. I was so concentrated on getting out of the house that I forgot to double-check the small drawer where I usually stored such items. So, with my mother arriving at my school, I informed a couple of my coworkers about all that had been happening. They did not hesitate to step forward and offer their assistance. "Let us know when you're ready to grab the rest of your stuff," Harper added, handing me her extra car keys. "We'll make it quick." So, a few days later, Harper and another co-worker, Zoe, accompanied me to my parents' house to retrieve the remainder of my belongings. I thought I was prepared for whatever bullshit they would do, but I misjudged how low they were willing to go. When we arrived at my room, it was unrecognizable. Brielle had moved more of her belongings in, blending them with mine like a territorial takeover. Clothes that were not mine were pushed into my dresser. Random baby stuff was stacked on my desk, and my nightstand had been completely emptied and replaced with her belongings. "What's going on here?" I murmured to myself more than everyone else. Brielle arrived in the doorway clutching a cup of coffee and seeming quite unconcerned. "Oh hey," she replied casually as if nothing had happened. "I guess some of my stuff got mixed in. It's hard to tell what's yours and what's mine at this point." I stared at her, unable to grasp the chutzpah of her statement. "You mean the stuff that was in my room where I've been living for years?" She shrugged and sipped her coffee. "Well, you already left, so what does it matter?" It was evident she did this on purpose to make things more difficult for me. But what she didn't realize was that I had foreseen this precise scenario. I took out my phone and accessed the album containing images of my room taken before she moved there. "I already have photos of everything," I explained, putting the screen up for her to see. "And I made a list of all my stuff down to the serial numbers on my electronics." Brielle's face twisted in irritation, but before she could answer, Mom and Dad appeared. "What's going on?" Dad inquired. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his voice filled with rage. "I came to grab some stuff I forgot," I replied, trying to remain calm. "But Brielle is claiming she can't tell what's hers and what's mine. I have documentation for everything I own." Dad's expression hardened. If you take anything that doesn't belong to you, I'll call the police. I laughed briefly and without humor. Go ahead, I replied. We can also talk to them about the legality of you entering my room without notice and tampering with my belongings. That silenced him. Harper and Zoe stepped in and helped me sort through the debris. Brielle attempted to fight when I picked up my laptop, saying it was hers, but all I had to do was provide the purchase documentation and a snapshot of the serial number. The more she realized her plan wouldn't work, the angrier she became. "This is so unfair," she exclaimed, throwing her fists in the air. "You're stealing from a pregnant woman." I turned to her, fed up. "The only person trying to steal anything here is you," I stated firmly. "Just like you've been trying to steal my time and my freedom by expecting me to be your unpaid nanny. Not anymore." I climbed into Harper's car and didn't look back. Now, it was 6 months ago. Brielle had the baby. And as I expected, everything is falling apart. My parents are now stuck providing the childcare they attempted to impose on me while working full-time jobs. They're fatigued and overwhelmed, according to the few family members who still communicate with me. Brielle hasn't even tried to find work. She claims she is too stressed to work, which is likely accurate, given that she spends the majority of her time reading through her phone and ignoring her obligations. She is still living at my parents' house, now with a crying newborn and an incomplete basement project that is depleting their retirement money. I've heard that they've made multiple attempts to reach me after my departure. First, I received a nasty SMS about being ungrateful. When that failed, they resorted to guilt trips about how much the baby needed me. The latest technique has been to send images of my niece with messages like, "Don't you want to meet your only niece?" and "She needs her aunt in her life." I've blocked them all on social media and set up email filters to prevent receiving their communications. A few family members who understand my situation have kept me updated, but I've made it clear that I'm not interested in mending connections unless my parents and Brielle admit their actions and make genuine adjustments. Ironically, if they had simply respected my limits and asked for occasional babysitting assistance like normal people, I would have likely obliged. I adore children, and would have gladly assisted them at times, but their attempt to force me into full-time childcare while neglecting my privacy and liberty shattered any hope of that happening. And yes, that is my tale. What I learned from all of this is that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for your family is to cease enabling their harmful conduct. I filmed my girlfriend leaving a man's bedroom. Then I sent the video to her Catholic parents. Now her dad cut her off, and her mentor just got fired. I've been with my girlfriend Vanessa, 24, for approximately a year and a half. We have been living together for the past 6 months. Overall, things have been going well, but something has been nagging me lately, and I'm not sure if I'm being rational or paranoid. Vanessa works as a junior analyst at a consulting firm. About 2 months ago, she began discussing a coworker named Derek, 28 male, who evidently attended the same graduate program as her just a few years before. Vanessa says Derek has been quite helpful in explaining some of the more sophisticated client work and has offered to assist her study for an upcoming certification exam that could lead to a promotion. At first, I thought this was fantastic. Vanessa has been working extremely hard and deserves the promotion. The difficulty is that these study sessions are always held at Derek's flat and typically begin around 7 or 8 p.m., while Vanessa does not return home until 1 to 3 a.m. When I inquired why they couldn't study at our house or at the office, Vanessa said Derek's apartment was more convenient because he had all of the reference materials there and it was calmer than the office. This is what has been bothering me. Vanessa turns her phone off or does not respond when I text her during these sessions. She thinks it's because they're so focused, but she's generally quite quick to respond. When she gets home, she typically smells like alcohol. When I ask about it, she says Derek occasionally offers her a glass of wine to help her relax while studying, but she's never been a big drinker before. These sessions occur 2 to 3 times each week and have been going on for roughly 6 weeks. Last week, I volunteered to bring them both dinner because they were studying so late, and Vanessa became very defensive, saying it would be distracting. When I try to express my discomfort with the scenario, Vanessa accuses me of not trusting her and calling me insecure. What truly disturbs me is that Vanessa has lots of other coworkers she could study with, including several women in her department who are also pursuing the same certification. When I mentioned it, she remarked, "Derek is the only one who's already passed the exam and knows the material well enough to help." Last night was the last straw. Vanessa left for her study session at 7 p.m. I texted her at 10 p.m. I asked when she would be home and received no response. Called at 11:30 p.m., straight to voicemail. She finally arrived home at 2:45 a.m., plainly drunk, and when I voiced concern, she accused me of being controlling and possessive. This morning I informed her that I am not comfortable with these late-night study sessions at Derek's apartment and asked if we might find another arrangement. Vanessa shouted at me, screaming, "I don't trust her. Derek is only boosting her career, and I'm undermining her success because I'm insecure." I want to be clear. I'm not attempting to control who Vanessa spends her time with or prevent her from furthering her profession, but arriving home after 2 a.m., it doesn't seem normal to me to smell like booze after regular study sessions with a male coworker while being unreachable by phone. I don't feel like I'm asking for much when I desire improved communication or a different study setup. Vanessa is now giving me the silent treatment, texting her sister that I am toxic and dominating. Her sister called me an asshole and told me to trust Vanessa or break up with her. So, am I a jerk for asking my girlfriend to quit her late-night study sessions at her coworker's apartment? Am I being unreasonable, or are my concerns justified? Edit. Thank you for your reply so far. Several people have asked for more information. Vanessa and I have a typically positive relationship, and this is the first serious disagreement we've had. I have no history of being jealous or controlling. The certification exam is still 3 months away. Despite Vanessa's continual mention of Derek, she has yet to introduce me to him. When I suggested meeting him, Vanessa stated it would be tough to combine business and personal life. Comment 1 NTA. Dude, I have been married for 12 years, and I can tell you that study sessions last till 2 a.m. There are no study sessions when wine is involved. The fact that she refuses to answer her phone and becomes defensive when asked fair questions is a major red flag. You are not being dominated by setting boundaries around your girlfriend's personal late-night hours with another man while drunk and unreachable. OP's reply. Thanks for this. I've been second-guessing myself because Vanessa is usually pretty reasonable and her reaction was so strong. It helps to hear that my concerns aren't completely off base. Comment, dude, trust your instincts, guy. I overlooked similar red signs early in my first marriage and later regretted it. If she is truly concerned about your sentiments, she should be willing to make a compromise on the venue or schedule. Comment 2. I work in consultancy. There is no reason why these study sessions should take place in his residence till 2 a.m. Most certification preparation may be completed during normal business hours, and if they are truly studying, they should be sober and focused. The fact that alcohol is used frequently tells you everything you need to know. Also, any decent coworker assisting someone with their studies would be understanding of including the spouse or meeting in neutral settings. OP's reply. That's a very helpful context. Vanessa made it seem like this was common in your field, but it never felt right to me. Comment 4 NTA. The biggest red flag is that the phone is turned off. Here's why. What if there is an emergency? What if something happens to you? No study session is significant enough to be fully unavailable for 6+ hours at a time. OP's reply. This is exactly what I tried to tell her. What if her parents needed to contact her or something happened to me? She simply replied I was being exaggerated. Comment 5. I'm a woman who works in consulting and has obtained equivalent certifications. I've never had to study in a male colleague's place till 2 a.m. with booze involved. There are study groups, online tools, review classes, and numerous other possibilities. She is making decisions without following appropriate procedures. OP's reply. Thank you for this perspective. It's good to hear from someone who actually works in the field and has gone through this process. Comment 6. Info. Have you met Derek? Has Vanessa volunteered to introduce you? Does she discuss these study sessions freely, or does she appear secretive? OP's reply. I have not met Derek. Vanessa objected to combining job and personal life. She talks a lot about him, but it gets awkward when I ask specific questions about what they studied or discussed. Usually merely mentions work stuff before changing the subject. Comment 7. YTA. You are insecure and controlling. Vanessa is an adult who can make her own choices regarding her career and friendships. If you don't trust her, don't be in a relationship with her. This post smacks of toxic masculinity. OP's reply. I respectfully disagree. I trust Vanessa in general, which is why this circumstance confuses me. I'm not trying to restrict her profession or friendships, but I believe it is appropriate to set boundaries for personal late-night events involving drink. Update. After reading your remarks, I decided to attempt and have a calm, honest chat with Vanessa. I waited till she was in a good mood yesterday evening and approached the situation as delicately as possible. I explained that I had been thinking about our dispute and wanted to better understand her point of view. Vanessa appeared agreeable at first. I asked her to explain why these study sessions had to be held at Derek's flat, and why they couldn't meet during normal hours or in public areas. Her reasoning was essentially the same as before. Derek has all of the resources, his flat is peaceful, and they can focus better in the evening. When I inquired about the drinking, she revealed that they normally have a bottle of wine during their meetings, but argued that it helps her relax and remember things better. When I told her this bothered me because it appeared more social than academic, she became defensive, saying I was reading too much into it. When I inquired whether I may meet Derek, the conversation went downhill quickly. Vanessa's response was swift and forceful. She claimed it would be unethical and unprofessional to introduce her boyfriend to a coworker. When I mentioned that she had introduced me to other coworkers at corporate gatherings, she explained that Derek was unique since they have a professional mentorship relationship that should not be confused by personal relationships. I tried to remain calm and asked if there was any way we could work out a solution, such as having her study in our house, or having me pick her up so she didn't have to drive drunk. Vanessa said I was possessive and tried to influence her job advancement. She accused me of not wanting her to succeed and claiming that my insecurity would hold her back professionally. Vanessa closed the talk by suggesting that if I couldn't trust her, we shouldn't be together. She claimed Derek is only a buddy who is assisting her professionally, and she will not sacrifice her professional development for my jealousy concerns. Here's where things get interesting. Vanessa departed for work early this morning, and I ran into her friend Jasmine near our apartment. Jasmine and Vanessa have been good friends since college, and she also works for the same consulting firm, in a different department. Jasmine asked how I was doing and added that she had heard Vanessa and I were having some relationship problems. I didn't want to go into depth, but Jasmine mentioned the certification exam and stated she was thinking about preparing for it as well. She inquired whether I thought Vanessa would be willing to incorporate her in the study group with Derek. I was perplexed and inquired what she meant. Jasmine responded, "You know, the study sessions they've been having. I've been wanting to join but wasn't sure if they'd want another person." I realized Jasmine had no idea these sessions were taking place in Derek's flat or that it was just the two of them. When I mentioned this, Jasmine appeared surprised. She explained that she had assumed there was just one thing, which is why she had not been invited. This led to a longer chat during which I learned several alarming facts. Jasmine and two other female colleagues are studying for the same qualification. Despite Derek's reputation as an expert, none of them have been invited to study with him. Jasmine had asked Vanessa a few weeks earlier if she wanted to start a study group, but Vanessa declined, stating she had it covered. According to Jasmine, Derek is not the only senior colleague who has passed this qualification and is willing to assist. Jasmine seemed genuinely worried when I explained the scenario. She found it strange that Vanessa would not want to study with others if she was serious about passing the exam, because group study is normally more productive. After speaking with Jasmine, I'm even more persuaded that something wrong is happening. If these were truly merely study sessions, why wouldn't Vanessa include her co-workers who are studying for the same exam? When Vanessa arrived home tonight, I decided to ask her about it. I said that I had run across Jasmine and discovered that she and others were also preparing for the certification. I suggested Vanessa invite them to her meetings with Derek. Vanessa's reaction was swift and fierce. She said I had no right to disclose our relationship troubles with her friends, and that I was attempting to destroy her study plans. When I suggested that studying in a group could be more beneficial, she said that Derek's teaching method is tailored to her, and that other students would be a distraction. I asked her directly, if this is really just about studying, why can't Jasmine or the others join us sometimes? Vanessa replied I was interrogating her, and that she didn't need to justify her study methods to me. Vanessa closed the discussion by saying she'll be at Derek's tomorrow night as scheduled, and that if I can't handle it, I should figure out what to do about it. She's now staying in the guest room and refusing to speak to me. I feel like I'm going insane here. Everything Vanessa says theoretically makes sense, but her conduct and reactions do not reflect someone who is simply studying with a coworker. The fact that she refuses to include other people studying for the same exam, refuses to allow me to meet Derek, and becomes enraged when I ask questions leads me to believe that something else is going on. I'm beginning to explore some of the comments in my initial post regarding showing up at Derek's apartment, but I don't want to be the person who doesn't trust his girlfriend. At the same time, I feel deceived. How would you handle this situation? Comment by Jasmine, found in the comments section. Hello, this is Jasmine. I am a lurker who noticed your post and wanted to clarify a few points. Everything OP stated about our talk is correct. Vanessa's behavior makes me quite concerned because it is unusual in our industry. Several of us have wondered why she wouldn't want study partners when we're all working toward the same goal. The fact that she keeps this so distinct from her other friendships is a major red flag. OP, you are not crazy. OP's reply. Holy crap, Jasmine. I can't believe you found this and decided to comment. Thank you for backing me up. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Comment, dude, go to Derek's apartment the next time she's there. You'll get your answer quickly. If they're genuinely studying, they'll sit at a table with books and notes. If they are not, well, then you'll know. OP's reply. I've considered it, but I'm concerned about crossing a line. What if I am mistaken and wind up seeming like a psycho boyfriend? Comment toi. Her colleague Jasmine verified your concerns, which alters everything. This isn't about your insecurity anymore. You have objective evidence that Vanessa's behavior is strange and secretive. Trust your instincts. OP's reply. That's exactly how I feel. Jasmine's opinion confirmed that this is not typical workplace conduct. Comment quatre. The fact that she is staying in the guest room and giving you the silent treatment for asking fair questions says it all. People that are honest do not respond defensively to legitimate questions from their spouses. OP's replied, you're right. If I were in her position and my concerns were really unfounded, I would want to reassure her and not punish her for asking. Update 2. This is likely to be my final update, and it is not the one I had hoped to write. After the chat with Jasmine and Vanessa's increasingly protective conduct, I determined I needed to know the truth, regardless of the outcome. I know some of you told me to just walk up at Derek's place, and while I was worried of looking like a neurotic boyfriend, I recognized I was already in a relationship with no trust or communication. Vanessa left for a study session last night at 7 p.m. She kissed me goodbye as usual, but felt strained. I waited about an hour before driving over to Derek's apartment complex, explaining that I was bringing them coffee and cookies because they were working so hard. Derek's address was familiar to me because Vanessa had mentioned the building previously, and I was able to locate his apartment number by consulting the building directory. When I arrived at his door about 8:30 p.m., I could hear music playing inside, but not the focused silence you'd expect from individuals studying. I knocked on the door and waited. It took around 3 minutes for someone to respond, which seemed weird, given that they were just sitting at a table studying. Derek appeared flustered when he eventually opened the door. He was dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, and his hair was disheveled. He clearly didn't expect to see me. "Oh, hi," he said. "You must be Vanessa's boyfriend. We're just wrapping up for tonight." I could see into the apartment from over his shoulder. There were no books, papers, or study materials visible. Only an open bottle of wine on the coffee table, and Netflix on pause, showing a romantic comedy. Derek looked frightened as he asked, "Can I come in for a minute?" "Actually, this isn't really a good time. Vanessa's in the bathroom and we're about to wrap up anyway." That's when I heard Vanessa's voice from deeper in the apartment, asking, "Who is it?" in a tone that didn't seem like someone studying. I pushed past Derek and entered the apartment. The flat was small, so it only took a few seconds to realize what was going on. Vanessa emerged from Derek's bedroom, dressed just in Derek's button-down shirt. Her hair was tousled, and she had that post-sex look that I recognized from our own relationship. For a few while, the three of us stood silently. Vanessa's expression changed from perplexed to scared as she comprehended what had just happened. "This isn't what it looks like," she began. "But honestly, what else could it look like?" I grabbed out my phone and began recording. "So this is studying?" I asked Vanessa. "Can you explain to me how this constitutes certification exam prep?" "Don't you dare record this!" Vanessa cried, but she was too far away to stop me, and I honestly didn't care about her comfort at that point. Derek attempted to step in front of my phone. "Dude, come on, don't be that guy, don't be that guy." I laughed. "I'm not the guy, asshole. My girlfriend is pretending it's a study session." I caught approximately 30 seconds of film before Vanessa grabbed a throw blanket from the couch and covered herself. The video plainly shows her wearing Derek's shirt, walking out of his bedroom, in an apartment with no study equipment, and evident indicators of intimacy. "Get out!" Vanessa screamed. "Get out right now! You have no right to be here!" "I have no right?" I inquired. "I'm bringing coffee to my girlfriend's study session, and I find her half naked in another man's bedroom, but I have no right to be upset?" Derek, to his credit, appeared genuinely uncomfortable about the scenario. "Look, man, I'm sorry. This got out of hand. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Shut up, Derek," Vanessa yelled. I looked at Vanessa, who was hugging the blanket over her and looking at me as if I had done something wrong. "How long?" I inquired. "It doesn't matter," Vanessa replied. "You're not supposed to be here. You can't just show up at people's apartments uninvited." "How fucking long, Vanessa?" Derek responded quietly. "About a month." "We need to talk," Vanessa remarked. "But not here. Come home and we'll discuss this like adults." "No," I replied. "We're done talking. We're done. Period. You can come get your stuff tomorrow when I'm at work." Vanessa screamed after me as I left the apartment, telling me I was making a tremendous mistake and ruining everything for nothing. When I went home, I was in complete shock. I had hoped that if I showed up and saw that they were truly studying, I'd appear like an idiot but still have a relationship. I sat in my car in our driveway for perhaps 20 minutes trying to understand what had just transpired. Then I got enraged. That's when I made a decision I'm not totally satisfied with. But I am not wholly sorry for either. Vanessa is from a highly religious family. Her parents are devout Catholics, and her three siblings are also highly active in their church. They are lovely individuals, but they have very traditional views about relationships and marriage. Vanessa has always been the good girl in the family, and her parents adore her. I shared the video with her parents and all three of her siblings. I included a statement claiming that Vanessa had been lying to me for months about studying with a co-worker. And when I went to check on her, I saw them together in his bedroom. I expressed my grief and disappointment, and I believed they should be aware that the relationship they had been supporting was founded on lies. Within an hour, my phone blew up. Vanessa's mother contacted me crying and asked whether the video was real. Then her father called, outraged, and demanded to know what type of man I was for publicly humiliating his daughter. Then Vanessa's siblings began calling. Finally, Vanessa called me, completely frantic. "How could you do this to me?" she yelled. "You've ruined my relationship with my family. My parents are devastated. My dad is talking about cutting me off financially. You ruined your relationship with your family when you decided to cheat, I told you. I just made sure they knew the truth. This is revenge. This is cruel and vindictive, and you're trying to destroy my life. Vanessa, you destroyed our life when you started fucking Derek a month ago. You destroyed it when you lied to my face every day for weeks. You destroyed it when you made me think I was crazy for having normal concerns about my girlfriend's behavior. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. This doesn't mean our whole relationship should be over. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash or double booking dinner plans. Having an affair for a month isn't a mistake, it's a choice. Vanessa attempted to persuade me to delete the tape, as if it were possible. She said she'd break up with Derek and we could go to counseling. She said she'd do anything to make things right. But here's the thing. Even if she hadn't cheated, our relationship would have ended anyhow. Vanessa stopped over this morning while I was at work to pick up her belongings. My neighbor texted me that she had come with Derek, the Audacity, and two other friends, and that they had rapidly loaded up a U-Haul truck. She left her key on the kitchen counter with a message that read, "I hope you're happy. You've ruined my family relationships and humiliated me in the worst way conceivable. What you did was worse than anything I did. I hope it was worthwhile." Honestly, it was worthwhile. Jasmine texted me this morning, saying she was proud of me for sticking up for myself and that other people at Vanessa's workplace were aware of what had occurred. Derek is apparently married, which I had no idea about, but she discovered the affair, so there were more consequences than I had anticipated. But honestly, if you're going to have an affair, you have no control over how far the consequences go. Thank you to everyone who has commented on my past posts. Your encouragement and insights made me realize that I wasn't being unreasonable, and it gave me the strength to follow my intuition. Edit. Many people want to know if Derek is married. I learned about this from Jasmine after everything had happened. Apparently, it is not widely known at their job that he is married, because his wife works in another city. But a few people are aware. When his wife found out, she called Vanessa's company, and the situation became workplace talk. I don't feel sorry for him. If you're going to cheat on your wife, don't be surprised if it destroys your life. Edit 2. Some argue that I was wrong to include Vanessa's family. I appreciate the point of view, but I'd like to clarify something. Vanessa's parents have been financially supporting her since she began her employment because the entry-level consulting wage in our city is insufficient to cover her expenses. They have been paying a portion of her rent, car payment, and student debts. They had a right to know that their good girl daughter was having an affair, especially given how committed they are in her life and our relationship. They've invited me over to supper dozens of times and treated me like family. I believe that they deserve to know the truth about the person they were supporting. Comment 1. Holy shit, OP. I've been following this saga from the beginning, and while I wasn't expecting the family nuclear option, I can't say I blame you. The sheer audacity of Vanessa screaming at you for embarrassing her when you caught her literally naked in another man's bedroom is mind-blowing. NTA for any of this. OP's reply. I was aware that the family issue was contentious, but after being misled for weeks, I felt compelled to inform people of the reality. Jasmine. This is Jasmine again. The fallout at work has been tremendous. Derek is in major problems with HR because he is married and was having an affair with a subordinate who is theoretically senior to Vanessa. Vanessa has requested a transfer to another squad. Everything has been a mess. Comment to Jasmine, could you confirm whether Derek was actually Vanessa's mentor or whether it was also part of the lie? Jasmine. He is not involved in certification preparation at all. He does not even have the credential that Vanessa was supposed to be studying for. The whole expert mentor stuff was total BS. Final OP comment. Thank you for following this trip and for your support. I wanted to provide one final update since many people have asked how I'm doing. It's been a week since everything went crazy, and I honestly feel better than I have in months. The incessant anxiousness and self-doubt have gone. I am sleeping better. I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. Vanessa is currently living with her older sister, and her relationship with her parents is still strained, according to Jasmine. Her father supposedly advised her that she needed to check her moral compass before they could restore normal interaction. I don't enjoy her family drama, but I don't regret my actions. Derek was dismissed yesterday. Apparently the affair, the misrepresentation of certification competence, and the fact that he was theoretically in charge of Vanessa made it an easy decision for HR. His wife is moving forward with the divorce. Thank you again to everyone who encouraged me to trust my intuition. You most likely saved me months or years in a lie-filled relationship. I'm going to walk away from Reddit for a while to focus on moving forward, but I'll report back in a few months on how things are going. Relax and trust your instincts. My husband left me in an Italian town after a fight, thinking I'd come back. But I didn't. Now he's the one trying to find me. Let's see how she gets back, Ethan jokes, slamming the car door in the evening air. Our rental car's taillights faded as they disappeared around the tight Italian street, leaving just dust and my husband's friends' laughter. I stood paralyzed, mouth wide mid-sentence. Our disagreement outside the modest cafe was rendered irrelevant by his unimaginable deed. He's coming back, I muttered, getting odd eyes from people eating dinner at sidewalk tables. This is just to scare me. The knot in my stomach intensified as minutes became hours. Darkness fell over the unknown town whose name I couldn't pronounce. I never envisioned Ethan drinking that much at lunch when I begged him not to. His friends, college buddies celebrating their yearly guys' reunion that I grudgingly joined, encouraged him. When I suggested returning to our hotel, Leo replied, "She's always controlling you, man." Ordering another round. Ethan followed me out, his words garbled but his wrath clear. Both sides' years of hatred erupted quickly, making the fight ugly. He hissed, "Your purse has your passport, right? Before getting behind the wheel. Then you'll figure it out. You're so smart. Always telling me what to do." Complete night descended as reality set in. Suddenly, the lovely Italian town felt dangerous. Cash count, €80, $37. Too little for a trip home and a hotel night. Ethan's wallet held my credit cards. When my small purse was full, he offered to carry them. I discovered the lowest pension in a shabby room above a bakery with a tiny bed and corner sink. Although she knew no English, the old woman who escorted me to the room patted my arm affectionately. "He blocked me," I gasped, glancing at my phone. 27 Ethan calls went to voicemail. Unanswered text messages arrived. Leo, Daniel, and all Ethan's car mates were tried. All blocked. I shuddered as I realized this was a premeditated humiliation. Breaks in sleep were punctuated by optimistic phone checks and panic. By daybreak, I believed this nightmare would cease. Ethan would apologize and blame me for overreacting to his joke. I'd be angry but relieved to return to our carefully crafted life in Boston, where he was a respected architect and I was his supporting wife who'd given up her design job to manage their home and social calendar. He didn't arrive. On the second day, I rationed my money and bought only a sandwich for lunch while touring the town's perimeter, checking every hotel and restaurant for our tour group. By dark, I learned they'd gone to Florence without me. On the third day, a friendly cafe proprietor saw me waiting outside and offered me free espresso and, in terrible English, directions to the police station. The officer looked unsurprised by my narrative, as if abandoned tourists were common, but his limited English and my non-existent Italian left me with a filed report and a sympathetic nod. The hardest decision of my life came that afternoon. In front of a crowded pawnshop display, I removed my wedding ring, the 2-carat diamond Ethan had upgraded on our 5th anniversary to replace our humble band. The merchant gave me significantly less than it's worth but enough to support my next step. "America, call family," the pawn trader said, counting euros. Though I nodded mechanically, a different idea was emerging inside. Family meant explaining, hearing my mother's "I told you so" about Ethan's rage, and facing acquaintances who saw our marriage's flaws I'd tried to hide. When I arrived, the bus station was silent. I only saw travel magazine locations on its electronic board. An overnight bus to Rome connected to ferries, buses, and locations Ethan and his buddies wouldn't look for me if they tried. Finger hovered on my father's name and contacts. He sent money for a flight home in one call. One call would take me back to my existence of steadily shrinking to fit Ethan's ego and demands. Ethan joked about hiding my portfolios when I considered returning to interior design. He asked, "Why complicate things? We don't need the money, and I need you focused on our life." I chuckled at it then, but sitting in that dingy station, I viewed it as another fence in his pen surrounding me. "Where you go?" inquired the ticket agent, an older woman with sympathetic eyes who'd been watching me stare at the departure board for 20 minutes. "Greece," I said, realizing my choice. "The furthest coastal village you can get me to." 14 hours later, I fell off the last bus, stiff from uncomfortable seats and strain. A place whose name I couldn't pronounce has whitewashed homes and the fragrance of salt air and olive groves. My phone battery died between nations. My stomach was empty with hunger, and the weight of what I'd done, or been done to me, weighed on my shoulders. Exhaustion blurred my vision as I headed toward the town center. 3 days of emotional whiplash had left me raw, alternating between rage at Ethan, anxiety of my uncertain future, and a strange, unexpected glimmer of deadly release. I could spend 2 nights in the cheapest room with my leftover euros. After that, I had no goal, friends, or local language words beyond please and thank you. But as I watched the sunset turn the Aegean waves gold and pink, I felt tranquil for the first time in years. Ethan wanted to teach me reliance. Instead, he accidentally freed me. As I left the settlement, the Greek sun burnt my feet in sightseeing sandals. Dehydration, hunger, and mental weariness made my world spin after my water bottle ran out hours earlier. Silver-green trees bordered the dusty route, their leaves gleaming like coins in the wind. I faintly saw olive orchards before my knees crumbled. I scarcely felt the ground collide with my face. A peculiar peace swept over me as darkness edged my vision. Maybe it was fitting. Abandoned by my husband in one country, collapsed alone in another. I closed my eyes, exhausted since Ethan left. "Fosmu, Koritsimu? My light, my girl?" She spoke through my haze, followed by aged hands rolling me over. An aged face with deep creases and warm, concerned eyes came into focus. She quickly spoke Greek, caressing my cheeks and offering a canteen. Water revived me enough to sit up, but my head still spun furiously. She called herself Daphne, repeating it while pointing. She gestured Claire. I attempted it. Daphne lifted me up, her petite figure surprisingly strong. She pointed to an olive tree-lined stone home and indicated walking. She led me carefully up the slope, and I nodded, powerless. I entered the farmhouse kitchen to the smell of herbs on wooden beams and something tasty on an ancient stove. Daphne placed me at a shabby wooden table before calling for help. A man's voice responded, and an elderly man with a sunburned face and silver mustache stepped in the doorway cleaning his hands. "Daphne?" Yanis pointed to his wife. He tentatively nodded at me, his eyes inquiring yet friendly. Daphne gave me a drink of chilled water and a bowl of basic soup. As the perfume reached my nose, my stomach growled, making Daphne smile. The evening was a mess of miscommunication. I used minimal words, hand gestures, and tears to describe my circumstance. Daphne nodded like she understood, but I knew she couldn't. Yanis was quiet but attentive, asking Daphne gesture-based questions. I took their spare room, a basic room with whitewashed walls and a tiny bed covered in a handmade quilt. I fell asleep, too fatigued to protest. Crowing roosters and fresh bread greeted morning. The foot of my bed had a basic cotton dress and cardigan that seemed decades old but just laundered. They were loose on me but a wonderful change from my trip suit. Daphne smiled at me and served strong coffee and delicious bread with olive oil and honey in the kitchen. I felt embarrassed after dawn cleared my head. I was fed and clothed by these strangers without inquiry. I needed to explain, pay, and move on. I expressed my thankfulness and want to return to the community using bad English and my phone's translation software, charged by Yanis adapter. Daphne's face dropped quickly. She vigorously shook her head, pointing outside to the rain on the windows and then to my still blistered feet. Stay, she said, using one of her few English words. Rest. I tried to depart several times over the next 3 days but was gently resisted. Daphne stopped me at the door with my purse and shoes, her sorrowful expression making me feel guilty. She held my hand and opened a little wooden box on the mantel to expose photos. Her fingers trembled as she pointed to a young woman with Daphne's eyes and Yanis' smile. Irini, she whispered, pointing far away. Australia. She cradled and held her hand at waist height, indicating a child, shedding tears. Grandbaby, she said in English, pointing to a recent baby photo. No, see? Then I understood. Daphne saw me as a replacement for her daughter. My heart broke for her loss, not manipulation. I nodded slowly and put my purse on the door hook. As I adjusted to their agricultural life, new rituals emerged daily. Daphne taught me how to pick chicken eggs without scaring them and hang laundry so the mountain air would catch it. Yanis patiently taught me to recognize vegetable garden weeds after I accidentally pulled out a herb. The labor was physical, unlike my meticulously groomed life in Boston, yet rewarding in ways I'd forgotten existed. My body objected at first, used to designer gyms and measured workouts. My hands got calluses and muscles I didn't realize ached each night. Each day, my pain subsided and my strength increased. Most crucially, farm chores and language lessons replaced my ongoing mental cycle of abandonment. Sitting on the modest porch while Daphne stitched and Yanis smoked his pipe at night, I found serenity. My betrayal still hurt, but here, among ancient olive trees and rural life, it felt like an unexpected chapter. Daphne sat with me shelling garden peas 2 weeks following my arrival. After thoughtfully studying my face, she asked slowly in her improving English, "Home? You want to go home?" She gestured like a plane and pointed at America. I was surprised by the question. Home. Our stylish Boston brownstone with designer furniture and matching decor came to mind. It also highlighted Ethan's controlling behavior, his helpful management of our finances that left me without independence, his subtle discouragement of my friendships, and his dismissal of my job goals. I cried as I spoke in a language Daphne couldn't comprehend but felt feelings that crossed the linguistic barrier. I told her about Ethan's betrayal, years of gently giving up parts of myself to make peace, and being abandoned like baggage in a distant country. As I spoke, Daphne's aged hand covered mine. She pointed to her heart, then the farm, then me once I finished. It was clear, I could stay if I wished. Work, I responded gently, imitating Yanis's olive tree care. I stay. I work. Daphne's smile burst like the Aegean daybreak. She nodded and squeezed my hand before returning to the peas, as if we'd decided on tomorrow's dinner rather than a life change. My olive-growing education began when I stayed. Next morning, Daphne woke me up with Irini's work attire and thick boots when stars still shone. I followed her and Yanis to the grove, where the first light of dawn barely revealed the ancient trees, half asleep. Elias, Daphne replied, pointing to the fruit-laden branches. She delicately raked the branches with wooden rakes to release the olives onto nets below. My first attempt rained branches, leaves, and a few olives, prompting Yanis' meticulous correction. My city-soft hands had blisters by mid-morning, the sun shining overhead, and my shoulders burning from exertion. Boston lady hands, Daphne mocked, scrutinizing my palms at lunch. She returned with a herbal, beeswax-scented salve from the house. The cooling relief was immediate as she put it on my raw flesh. "Tomorrow, better," she said. To her surprise, she was right. I improved my technique, strength, and hands every day. Within weeks, I could work with them for hours without complaining, proud of the fruit piles. Sorting was harder than harvesting. We carefully selected the olives by quality at a large table under a pergola, perfect for premium oil, slightly blemished for second grade, damaged for soap production. Daphne initially watched me closely and gently corrected my blunders. Her corrections decreased as my eye learned minor differences. "You learn fast," Yanis said one evening, improving his terrible English and my basic Greek. He gave me his highest compliment, and I felt warm. I learned beyond the groves in Daphne's kitchen, which originally intimidated me with its lack of modern amenities. My Boston cooking skills included following fancy magazine recipes for dinner gatherings that delighted Ethan's coworkers. Daphne's cuisine was based on years of experience and observation, not measuring cups or temps. "Watch," she'd say, "kneading bread dough with practice." I tried to emulate her moves but failed miserably. My first outside stone oven loaves were deformed, underbaked, or burned. Daphne advised me to practice, breaking up my worst attempts to taste them. All learning is waste. I found her acceptance of imperfection revolutionary. In my past, mistakes were hidden, not stepping stones to mastery. The simplicity of their meals showed how processed my American diet was. Everything came from their land or surrounding farms. Sun-warmed veggies, morning eggs, and cheese from the goats down the road. The flavors were fresh and needed only olive oil, lemon, and Daphne's garden herbs. This diet and work altered my body. As lean muscle replaced fat, my luxury clothes loosened. Olive oil soap and sweat brightened my skin, once preserved by pricey creams. A stranger peered back at me in the small mirror over the bathroom sink. Tanner, stronger, and somehow more substantial despite weighing less. Daphne and I communicated beyond labor and food as my Greek vocabulary grew. Her black and white village childhood photos were displayed in her picture albums during evening breaks. I was surprised to learn she taught before joining her family's olive business after marriage. Imitating keyboard typing, she asked, "You?" She saw images of my interior design projects from before marriage on my phone, a career Ethan had disregarded as a hobby. Daphne pointed out her favorites and made admiring sounds as she studied them. She said, "Beautiful thinking," patting her temple. Her affirmation of my creative labor brought tears to my eyes, simple appreciation that Ethan had steadily withheld throughout our marriage. Daphne taught me to knit one rainy afternoon, patiently letting me drop stitches and make uneven rows. My first project was a lumpy, uneven scarf I fashioned by hand. I was more proud of it than the luxury cashmere Ethan gave me for Christmas. Next came a clay mug Yanis helped me make and a woven basket a neighbor taught me. Each thing had hours of study and connection, stories no luxury could. As I became less materialistic, my collection grew. Daphne and Yanis approached me one morning after 3 months of without pay except accommodation and board. They showed me the small amount of olive oil they crushed and packaged from our harvest in a small building. "Market day," Daphne said, pointing to the calendar. "You come." Locals and tourists explored the village market, where farmers and artists sold their items. Daphne and Yanis placed golden green oil, olive soap, and preserved olives on their plain table. They surprised me by placing me at the front of the table to talk to customers. My terrible Greek and their limited English caused confusion and hilarity, but sales increased throughout the day. Daphne gave me a euro envelope after the market closed. "Just your part," she said. "Fair work, fair pay." I looked at the small amount, maybe enough for one supper at Ethan and my favorite places. This money symbolized independence acquired via hard work, which I hadn't enjoyed in years. No attachments, no hidden gratitude or compliance expectations, just fair pay for honest effort. I kept the envelope beneath my pillow that night, touching it occasionally to establish its authenticity. Ethan took charge of our finances to simplify things, leaving me with credit cards tied to accounts he oversaw during our decade of marriage. This modest stack of euros was the first step toward reconstructing my life. As I fell asleep, I realized I hadn't thought about Ethan during market day, preoccupied with Greek transaction terms and product pride. Olive trees, cookery courses, and the rising confidence that I was capable of more than he had ever allowed me to believe had replaced him in my thoughts. Daphne and Giannis asked me to dine at the Village Square Taverna the next week, my first since arriving. A borrowed blouse from Daphne made me uneasy as we entered the busy business. Michalis, the owner, enthusiastically hugged the couple before looking at me. "Our American," Daphne proudly remarked in Greek, a term I know refers to me, Claire. Michalis grinned and took us to their usual table. Giannis cleared his throat and spoke carefully English over grilled seafood and village wine. "Claire, we want to talk business with you." He surprised me with his seriousness. Had I erred? Was I ready to move on? Daphne patted my hand across the table and continued where her husband left off. "We old now? 68, 70 years?" she said to Giannis. "No children here. Irini not coming back." Giannis nodded solemnly. "We think retire soon. 2, 3 years? But olive trees," he gestured. 200 years old. Need young hands." Understanding made me gasp. Daphne smiled with crinkled eyes. "You learn fast. Work hard. We teach everything." She spread her hands in offering. "Business yours." The idea shocked me. They scarcely knew me, a foreigner who came into their life months before. They offered a future I couldn't foresee. "But I don't know enough," I mumbled. "The trees, the pressing, the business side." "You learn." Giannis insisted. "We teach. No rush." My real apprenticeship began that night. Not only an extra pair of hands, I inherited generations of knowledge. Each morning, Giannis showed me how soil variances affected taste profiles, how to spot disease early, and when to harvest each region for best oil quality. Daphne taught me their business records, which included handwritten ledgers and basic computer spreadsheets their grandson had set up during a holiday visit years earlier. She tracked income and expenses in a useful but archaic way. I spent hours improving their systems to simplify inventory and sales monitoring. "Look," I showed Daphne one night how to filter the spreadsheet to reveal which oil sold best at which marketplaces. Her eyes expanded as numbers revealed patterns. "Smart," she nodded. "Boston lady brain good for business." With their permission, I made minor marketing changes. I learned about flavor profiles and meal pairings from Daphne's many culinary classes and updated our hand-labeled bottles. I answered tourists' questions at our market stand with a simple pamphlet on their traditional practices. I made connections outside Daphne and Giannis' circle as my Greek improved. The pharmacist who prescribed Daphne's blood pressure medicine stopped by our market booth for non-business chats. The baker's wife invited me to her monthly coffee with village women, a daunting yet valuable immersion in local language and customs. When the taverna started serving our premium oil and placing small cards with our new labels on each table, Michalis became an unexpected ally. "Good for you. Good for me." He winked when I thanked him. 2 nearby eateries contacted us about providing after hearing about us. I attended my first village ceremony, the butcher's granddaughter's christening, 6 months into my new existence. From the rear of the modest church, I watched the community ritual with a lump in my throat. The elderly priest recognized me and greeted me afterward, stopping his Athens seminary English. "You bring new life to Old Grove," he murmured, his rheumy eyes gleaming. "Good for village. Young people leave for Athens, for America. Village needs new blood." His acceptance seemed to eliminate the last obstacle. After that, name day celebrations, beach parties, and village committee meetings concerning the summer festival were more frequent. Each incident added to my web of connections. Zoe, the weaver next to our weekly market stall, became a friend. Young widow, she had a sharp wit and pragmatic approach like my college friend. Our chats in my increasing Greek and her superb English covered business plans, village gossip, and personal observations. You never speak of America," she said quietly as we packed away our unsold products. "Family there? Friends?" Question stung me abruptly. I'd forgotten my former life since I was so concentrated on my new one. My parents died years ago. A few friends, but I paused, recognizing Ethan had steadily removed me from my support network by continuously finding reasons why my college pals were difficult or work colleagues used me. Zoe nodded knowingly. The husband who left you in Italy? You never say his name. Ethan, I began, the word strange after months of stillness. His name is Ethan. Her honesty was refreshing after months of Daphne and Iana's subtle evasion. I don't know, I said. I haven't checked. My phone, I waved unclearly. I had turned it on sometimes to shoot shots but had abandoned my American email and social networks, afraid of what may be there. Zoe arched her eyebrow. Perhaps time to look. Not for him. For you. To close the door properly. I remembered her words. After helping Daphne cook dinner, I charged my ancient phone and connected to the farmhouse's basic Wi-Fi in my room. I signed into my neglected email account with shaky fingers. The screen showed hundreds of unread messages. Several former pals sent me messages ranging from casual check-ins to serious queries. I felt shame as I withdrew from their lives without explanation, just as I had from Ethan's. I noticed a post from my former design mentor. Job opportunity, followed by urgent follow-ups. Opening it revealed she recommended me for a remote consulting employment with a sustainable building materials company. The final email, 2 weeks ago, said the post was still open if I was interested. Ethan Davis email with the subject line, I know where you are. Froze my fingers before I could examine this unexpected bridge to my former existence. It arrived hours earlier, according to the timestamp. I opened it, heart racing. Claire, it's taken months and a private investigator, but I finally tracked you to that backwater in Greece. This has gone on long enough. I'm coming to bring you home and end this ridiculous tantrum. My flight lands in Athens on Thursday. Be ready. 3 days from now. The room whirled as panic and wrath crashed in my chest. How dare he? After months without speaking, he expected to find me like lost luggage. As I stumbled downstairs, I held my phone. Daphne looked up from the account ledger on the kitchen table, her smile dimming as she saw my reaction. Bad news from America, she whispered. Ethan, I did. He's coming here. Thursday. Daphne narrowed her gaze. She slipped an envelope across the table toward me from under the ledger. Good timing then? Was waiting for right moment. Greek-English legal documents carrying my name and Daphne and Yanis were inside. Partnership agreement, Daphne said. 1/3 business yours now, not future now. I stared at the document, tears in my eyes, recognizing its meaning. Genuine collaboration, not simply job or apprenticeship. Room to stay, basis to build on. Not charity, but honor. You choose what happens Thursday, Daphne replied firmly, striking the papers. You have home here, business here, friends here. She pointed at my phone. That man, he no longer decides. Her words enveloped me in assurance. I felt anchored for the first time since being abandoned in that Italian town. Ethan arrived to find a drastically different woman than the one he left. The ensuing days were a whirlwind of preparation, not Ethan's style. No bags or tears, only emotional fortification. Sophia, the village's only lawyer, helped me write Greek and English divorce documents. I tentatively accepted remote consultation from my former design mentor. I even emailed friends I left behind, explaining briefly without regrets. On Thursday, the Greek summer sky was clear and bright. Yanis and I were evaluating olive oil samples in the processing shed when a rental car engine started up in the afternoon. Daphne stood at the threshold, worried yet determined. He is here, she said. Heart racing, I wiped my hands on my work apron and left. Ethan stood outside a silver automobile with fashionable sunglasses on his nicely coiffed hair, disliking the rustic cottage. I knew his casual but costly travel suit from previous business trips. Tailored chinos and a button-down that probably cost more than a week's olive oil profit. He initially ignored me, allowing me precious seconds to calm down. The ancient olive trees and aged stone buildings of my birthplace made this man who had once been my world seem smaller. Ethan, I called, calmly to my surprise. His bewilderment when he turned was nearly funny. He looked from my work boots to my sun-browned arms, then at my scrunchy-tied hair. I watched his face struggle with recognition and incredulity. My God, Claire, What happened to you? The familiar, critical tone that formerly would have sent me racing to rectify whatever he found missing now flowed over me like a wave. Life happened, I said, approaching him slowly. What are you doing here, Ethan? His charm slipped into place as he removed his sunglasses and extended his arms. I've come to take you home, of course. This has gone on long enough, don't you think? Whatever point you were trying to make. This isn't about making a point, I said, halting far away. This is about making a life. His smile sank. I heard Daphne and Yanis leaving the home quietly behind me. While they couldn't understand us, they hid in plain sight, ready to act. Ethan hardened as he saw them. Are these the people you've been staying with? Have they been holding you here? Because if so, I interrupted. They've been teaching me. About olive farming, about community, about kindness without conditions. I pointed to the woods. I'm part owner now. I have a business here. He looked incredulous, then condescending, as I knew. A business, Claire? Be serious. You're a designer, not a farmer. This is what some eat, pray, love phase after our fight. I admit I shouldn't have left you in Italy. It was a stupid, drunken mistake. I've apologized. Now it's time to come home. You've apologized. When? In what universe does tracking me down and demanding I return count as an apology? The charm vanished as his jaw tightened. Fine. I'm sorry I left you in Italy. It was immature and wrong. Is that what you want to hear? Can we move past this now? Why did you even look for me, Ethan? It's been months. Why now? He shuffled uncomfortable, seeing the old couple observing us carefully. Can we discuss this privately? In the car, perhaps. They don't speak English, and I have nothing to hide from them. Why now? His shoulders sagged. Your parents have been calling. Friends asking questions at events. Clients wondering why you're not at the house when they visit. It looks, he said. Bad for your image, I said. It damaged your reputation? Our reputation, he retorted. Our life together. The one we built over 10 years of marriage. The one you built, I said. The one where I gradually became nothing more than an accessory to your success. Tell me, Ethan, did you even notice how unhappy I was before Italy? Did you care? His expression grew darker. We had a good life, Claire. A beautiful home, financial security, respect in the community. What more could you possibly want? I found purpose, connection, and agency over my own choices here, in a place you dismiss as primitive and backward. I pointed to the modest stone home behind me. He protested, This isn't you, sounding desperate. The Claire I know wouldn't choose manual labor and poverty over comfort and position. I grinned, understanding his statement's core truth. You're right. The Claire you knew wouldn't have. But that woman died in Italy when her husband abandoned her as a joke. The woman standing before you made different choices. Daphne came over and pressed our partnership agreement into my palm. She recognized the occasion even though she couldn't follow our words. The document was unfolded and held to Ethan. I have legal ties here now. A business partnership. Responsibilities to people who value me for my contributions, not my appearance or social connections. Face flushed with rage. This is ridiculous. Whatever game you're playing? It's not a game, I answered, taking Sophia's envelope from my pocket. These are divorce papers, Ethan. Already filed, with provisions for division of assets. He studied the package as if it may burn him. You can't be serious. You'd throw away everything for this? He mocked the small property. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing something better, something real. I approached and placed the envelope in his hard hand. You left me, Ethan. You drove away laughing. You just never expected I'd find my way without you. His fingers immediately wrapped around the documents, his expression alternating between amazement, wrath, and wounded pride. You'll regret this, he muttered, but even he thought the threat was empty. When the novelty wears off and you're still hauling olives in the hot sun at 60, you'll remember what you gave up. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather risk regret from choices I made than live with the certainty of regret from choices made for me. Yanis went closer and placed a worn hand on my shoulder. Despite not understanding our conversation, he saw the conclusion in our body language. He spoke Greek to Ethan in a stern but loving manner. "What did he say?" Ethan inquired, lowering his voice. "He said the road back to Athens is dangerous after dark. You should leave now to reach the city before nightfall." Ethan looked between us and realized this wasn't a negotiation or rescue. "Adieu." He returned to his rented car with the divorce papers without saying a word. Daphne put her hand in mine as the car drove off the dirt road. The three of us turned toward my residence. Tonight's tasks: cataloging oil samples, cooking dinner, and checking tomorrow's market inventory. My spouse left me in a strange nation, thinking I'd be powerless and return after learning my lesson. Instead, I discovered fertile footing to grow stronger and deeper roots than he expected. The cruelest actions can bring the greatest blessings. Ethan accidentally freed me while trying to break me. My brother stalked my girlfriend, but my family defended him. We were threatened, so we left, started over, and cut off all contact. As soon as my girlfriend Sophia, 25, walked in, Ethan began acting aggressively, making her incredibly uncomfortable with absolutely out-of-character conduct. He virtually pushed our mother aside just to be the first to hug Sophia, and he held her so tightly that she had to physically pull away. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her hand or shoulder, making odd inside jokes despite the fact that they'd only recently met, and actually pushing past me many times to sit next to her, until he crossed the line by trying to feed her with his fork while staring attentively. Sophia was obviously uneasy, but she stayed courteous because it was our first family gathering and she wanted to make a good impression. Ethan spent the entire evening reciting embarrassing anecdotes about my youth, twisting them to make me look like a miserable fool. He even told a completely false story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my claimed emotional abuse, which never occurred. Sophia knew these stories weren't genuine since I'd already told her about my adolescence, but my parents just nodded along as if Ethan was spouting biblical truth. After dinner, things worsened. Sophia offered to help clean up, hoping to be helpful. I was helping my father move some boxes in the garage when I remembered I hadn't seen Sophia in a while. I found her in the kitchen, with Ethan actually blocking her departure. He had trapped her at the sink and told her she deserved someone more exciting than his boring, unstable older brother. He was standing far too close, one hand on the counter next to her hip. Sophia ordered him to back off twice before I came inside. When she spotted me, she was relieved and came to stand next to me. Ethan just laughed dismissively, as if everything was one big joke, but Sophia was visibly shivering. My fiancée Sophia and I had been dating for 8 months, and everything was going great until Ethan started to wreck our lives with his compulsive behavior. I suppose I should explain our family dynamic so that this makes sense. Ethan and I were raised in a tiny Minnesota town by upper-middle-class parents. Our parents both work in real estate and make good money, but they've always prioritized appearances over genuine family relationships. Ethan was born when I was 3 years old, and he has always been the focal point of our parents' lives. He could do no wrong, but everything was always my fault. Growing up, Ethan exhibited some pretty alarming conduct, which my parents completely disregarded. When he was 6, he purposefully smashed my game console because I refused to let him play whenever he wanted. Instead of penalizing him, my parents got him his own and told me I needed to learn to share more effectively. At 12, he murdered my pet hamster by giving it chocolate, knowing it was deadly, but my parents stated it was a mistake and that I shouldn't have a pet if I couldn't properly care for it. In high school, he created allegations that I cheated on my then-girlfriend, resulting in our split. My parents claimed he was merely protecting her. That tendency persisted into maturity. Ethan still lives at home with our parents, works at my father's real estate firm, and generally does whatever he wants. He has ruined every relationship I have tried to form. With my previous girlfriend, he convinced her family that I had a gambling problem, which was absolutely false. Before that, he told another woman that I had cheated on all of my ex-partners, which was also false. My parents would either justify his acts or accuse me of being overly dramatic. When I met Sophia, I resolved to do things differently. I kept our relationship absolutely quiet from my family for the first 3 months to protect her from Ethan's regular techniques. Sophia is truly the best thing that has happened to me. She is an intelligent and caring pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met in the hospital cafe while I was visiting a coworker who had recently undergone surgery. She was on her lunch break, and we started talking about how bad the hospital coffee was. After a few more coffee discussions, we began dating, and everything seemed great. Sophia knows everything about my family history because I wanted her to be prepared. In fact, she was the one who pushed me to try to introduce her, claiming that things might be different now that we were all adults. One of my favorite things about her is that she constantly looks for the best in people. I eventually agreed to introduce Sophia to my family at a dinner party last month, and then everything started to fall apart. The main difficulty began several days after the dinner. Sophia began to receive weird phone calls and messages from numbers she did not know. At first, she responded with heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups. Then they started leaving more weird voicemails, labeling her stuck up and cold for turning down a better option. Some of the messages included exact data about her work schedule and what she wore that day, proving someone was watching her. Sophia didn't realize it at first, but a couple voices reminded me of Ethan's high school classmates. This gang of boys still goes out with him and basically follows his orders because his parents give him money to spend. When Sophia blocked those numbers, they simply began phoning from new ones. Then Ethan's pals began showing up at the hospital, appearing to be visitors but actually lingering around the pediatric wing, where Sophia works. They would look at her for hours, making loud comments that she could hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after she worked the night shift. She was so horrified that she contacted me crying from inside her car, afraid to drive home in case they were monitoring her. I had to come pick her up and drive her car back, while my friend followed us in his car to ensure we weren't being pursued. Sophia has begun experiencing panic attacks before her shifts, and her coworkers have realized something is plainly wrong. Yesterday, I finally got enough evidence to approach Ethan. I had voicemail recordings, messaging screenshots, and hospital security camera footage that showed his friend stalking Sophia. I visited our parents' house, where Ethan still resides, and showed him everything. He just sat there, smugly smiling, as I spoke. Then he looked me directly in the eyes and stated he had no idea what I was talking about. But maybe if Sophia wasn't such a spoiled brat, no one would feel the need to teach her a lesson. Something inside of me snapped when he said that, and I hit him in the face. Ethan immediately began screaming as if I had tried to kill him, despite the fact that it was only a little nosebleed. Our parents rushed in, and of course, they lost it. At me, not him. They didn't even look at the evidence I tried to provide to them. My mother became enraged over her poor baby boy being attacked, while my father yelled that I had always been jealous of Ethan and needed professional help for my anger issues. When I tried to explain the harassment, Mom said Sophia was probably flirting with Ethan at dinner and is now playing the victim because she was caught. Dad urged me to leave his house and not return until I had apologized to Ethan and gotten my head straight. I am writing from Sophia's flat, where I have been staying since last night. She finally fell asleep in the other room after crying for hours, frightened of going to work tomorrow. Sophia's supervisor has been understanding thus far, but she is concerned that if the problem escalates, she may lose her job. She enjoys working with children in pediatrics and should not be forced to give it up because of my insane brother. I really don't know what to do anymore. Every time I think Ethan cannot go any lower, he proves me wrong. Our parents are absolutely encouraging his actions and have been gaslighting both me and Sophia about what is happening. The police will not take action unless there is more direct evidence linking Ethan to the harassment. Sophia is terrified. Her job is in jeopardy, and my family treats us as if we are the problem. Has anyone ever dealt with something like this? How do I keep Sophia safe while dealing with such a toxic family? Should I do more to capture everything that happens? Any advice would be highly appreciated. I'm at my wit's end. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to my first post. Reading all of your answers helped me realize how serious the problem is. Sophia and I attempted to follow a lot of the advice many of you gave about documenting everything and taking legal action. Unfortunately, things have become worse over the last 2 weeks, and I need to rant about it. We followed the instructions and went to the police. Sophia and I spent hours gathering proof, including screenshots of all the threatening messages, voicemail recordings, and hospital security footage that showed Ethan's buddies lurking. We also received written testimonies from 3 of Sophia's coworkers who witnessed the stalking conduct. The officer we initially spoke with was concerned, particularly regarding workplace harassment, but things quickly became difficult. It comes out that Ryan, Ethan's best buddy and one of the main perpetrators of the abuse, is the son of a local police sergeant. When we stated Ryan's name, the officer's tone completely altered. He began by stating that without concrete proof that Ethan was coordinating everything, there was little they could do. He further indicated that Sophia was misinterpreting friendly attention from people who were just hanging around the hospital for legitimate reasons. He even had the arrogance to wonder if Sophia had somehow piqued their interest. We wanted to speak with another officer, preferably a female, but they refused. Finally, they stated they'd send a warning to everybody we could identify from the tape, but that was all they could do in the absence of specific evidence of actual threats. It felt like an absolute waste of time. My parents' reaction was far worse than I anticipated. The day after we went to the police, Ethan arrived at their house with a black eye, claiming I had struck him again. I hadn't seen him since the night I hit him 2 weeks before, but my parents quickly believed him. My mother called, sobbing about how I'd lost control and was trying to destroy Ethan's life. She said going to the police demonstrated I was purposefully attempting to damage his future over a stupid misunderstanding. Then my father called. He was infuriated. He threatened to cut me off financially, which would have been problematic if I still relied on them. Fortunately, I have a steady career in software development and my own apartment. He also threatened to fire me from the family real estate company, conveniently forgetting that I never worked there. That is Ethan's job. It truly demonstrates that they don't regard me as my own person, but rather as an accessory to Ethan's life. The true calamity occurred this past weekend. My mother repeatedly called and texted, saying they wanted to fix things as a family. She assured that Ethan was sorry for everything and wanted to apologize to both me and Sophia. She stated that they had discussed limits with him, and he was aware that his behavior was wrong. After discussing it with Sophia, we decided to give them the opportunity to make things right. That was an enormous error. We went to my parents' house expecting a family dinner to reconcile things. I sensed there was something odd from the moment we went in. The house was full with my parents, Ethan, our aunt and uncle, who usually support Ethan, and, worst of all, Ryan and 2 of the guys who had been pursuing Sophia at work. My mom referred to it as a family intervention. For 2 hours, they all took turns criticizing Sophia's character, while Ethan sat there looking smug. My mother delivered a lengthy lecture about Sophia's obvious jealousy of Ethan's attractiveness and success. What success? And how she had been flirting with him during dinner. She claimed Sophia made up the harassment because she felt sorry about leading Ethan on, and was now attempting to cover her tracks. Sophia, according to my aunt, was probably used to having attention from males at work and mistook nice conduct for stalking out of guilt. Ethan played his job brilliantly, appearing sad and perplexed as to why Sophia would fabricate such nasty lies about him. He kept stating how happy he was to finally have a sister-in-law and how saddened he was that she was attempting to turn everyone against him. Ryan and his friends backed him up, claiming they had simply come to the hospital to see Ryan's ailing grandmother, who supposedly transfers between floors and apartments every day. The toughest thing was when they began questioning Sophia's mental stability. They mentioned that she sometimes works night shifts, which suggested that a lack of sleep was contributing to her paranoia. They discussed how stressful working with sick children must be, as if she was putting her professional stress into harmless interactions with Ethan and his pals. My mother even had the audacity to suggest a therapist who may help Sophia work through her tendency to create drama. Sophia originally attempted to defend herself by politely discussing the harassment and even giving them the messages and voicemails again. But they kept talking over her, dismissing her facts as misunderstandings or hinting that she had caused everything. When Ryan began outlining in detail what Sophia had worn on specific days at work, demonstrating he had been monitoring her, my parents assumed Sophia was attempting to attract attention. Things grew terrible when they invited Ryan and his pals to join us for dessert, claiming they wanted to demonstrate what good young men they truly were. Sophia was having problems breathing and had to leave the room. When I attempted to follow her, my mother grabbed my elbow and told me it was time to choose between my real family and a clearly unstable girl who's just trying to cause problems. Sophia is who I choose. We left quickly, and I haven't spoken to my family since that night. Ethan's buddies have escalated their harassment, spreading reports at Sophia's workplace that she is mentally unstable and has a history of false claims. Her supervisor summoned her to a meeting yesterday to raise worries about drama at work. While he appeared empathetic, he warned her that the disruptions were beginning to damage her job performance and that she considered transferring to a different department or hospital. We've engaged an attorney to help us obtain a restraining order, but the procedure is sluggish. Sophia has been looking for jobs at other hospitals, and one of her old co-workers has offered to help her find work at a hospital some 300 miles away. I hate that we're being forced to take such harsh actions, but I can't face watching Sophia live in constant worry and tension. She now sobs before every shift and has lost weight because she is too anxious to eat properly. I really don't know what to do anymore. Every attempt to approach this sensibly has failed. My family is absolutely insane, the cops are ineffective, and it appears that Ethan is winning. How can you fight back when people want to believe the worst about you and the best about your abuser? Update 2. I wish I had better news, but everything fell apart following what happened at my cousin Chloe's wedding last weekend. I've been trying to comprehend everything for the last few days before posting this update. What was supposed to be a happy family celebration turned into a nightmare that left Ethan in handcuffs and our family irrevocably shattered. To begin, Chloe has always been the only member of the family, aside from my grandfather, who recognized Ethan's deception. When we were youngsters, Mom caught Ethan abusing her cat and informed everyone, but my parents convinced us she was lying for attention. She never forgot, and she has been completely supportive of me throughout Sophia's condition. She even drafted a thorough statement for our attorney explaining Ethan's troubling background. When Chloe sent her wedding invites, Sophia and I were hesitant to go. But Chloe called us directly and said she only invited Ethan because her parents insisted, and she had hired extra security just to keep an eye on him. She also sat us at a table with her husband's family, far from my parents and Ethan. We assumed that with all of the witnesses and security present, Ethan wouldn't do something stupid. We were mistaken. The ceremony went well, owing in large part to Ethan's duties as a groomsman. Noah, Chloe's husband, is our cousin on the other side of the family and was unaware of any of the drama. Everything appeared to be in order at first glance. Ethan sat at the family table with our parents, while we were across the room with Chloe's in-laws. Sophia began to relax and enjoy herself for the first time in weeks. Sophia used the restroom around 9 p.m. She had been gone for approximately 10 minutes when I saw Ethan wasn't at his table anymore. Something seemed strange, so I went to check on her. Sophia screamed as I was about to enter the restroom. I began running when Noah and his brother turned the bend in front of me. They discovered Ethan pushing Sophia against the hallway wall outside the lavatory, attempting to force himself on her while she struggled. He had one hand over her mouth and the other forcefully grabbing her arm, leaving bruises. Just as I arrived, Noah and his brother had dragged Ethan off of her. Sophia shook and cried. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there were already visible bruises on her arm. Ethan was clearly intoxicated and began ranting that Sophia had been teasing him all night, she had literally not gone near him, and that she had followed him into the hallway. She arrived first. Noah's brother, a police officer from another city, quickly called the local police, and Noah assisted Sophia into a private room where Chloe and her mother attempted to calm her down. This is where things went even worse, if that's possible. When the cops arrived, my parents attempted to stop them from detaining Ethan. My mother cried that it was all a misunderstanding, that Sophia had plainly misled Ethan, and that they shouldn't ruin his life for one minor drunken mistake. My father physically attempted to stop the officers from handcuffing Ethan, urging that they treat this as a family matter. Ethan went between crying about how Sophia seduced him and threatening everyone, claiming that none of us understood what he was capable of. He appeared absolutely unhinged. As they eventually got him into the police car, he started yelling that Sophia was a whore who had been asking for it since the day they met. Some guests captured the entire event on their phones. The aftermath was catastrophic. My parents got into a frenzy, phoning everyone in the family to provide their account of the events. They claim Sophia took Ethan into a quiet spot, came onto him, and shouted assault when he rebuffed her. They claim she planned the entire incident to exact revenge on Ethan for revealing her lies about the harassment. They even claim that Noah and his brother hit Ethan before the cops arrived, which they did not, and that Sophia hurt herself. The one bright spot is that the wedding video shows Ethan following Sophia into the restroom hallway. With her bruises, many witnesses, and video proof of Ethan's breakdown during the arrest, our lawyer believes we have a solid case. Several relatives who attended the wedding have come forward to testify about Ethan's actions throughout the night, including inappropriate remarks he made about Sophia and how he pursued her during the reception. My parents have threatened to disown me unless Sophia drops the claims. They've been phoning and messaging nonstop, alternately apologizing for tearing the family apart and threatening to cut me out of the inheritance. They even showed up at my apartment yesterday, generating a disturbance that prompted my neighbors to contact the police. My mother screamed over how I was putting her sweet boy in jail, while my father swore to make sure I never worked in this state again. Sophia and I reached a decision. She accepted a job offer at a hospital 300 miles away, and I plan to work remotely for my firm. We're moving at the end of next month. Many people may believe we are fleeing, but we simply need to escape the toxicity and start over somewhere new. Chloe understands and has agreed to keep us up to date on any family developments. The most difficult part of all of this is knowing that my family will never accept Ethan needs help. Even after seeing him abuse someone at a wedding in front of witnesses, they continue to defend him and blame the victim. I've often wondered what might have happened if someone had intervened when we were kids, but we'll never know. Right now, I just need to concentrate on safeguarding Sophia and creating our new life together, away from Ethan and my parents' enabling behavior. Update 3. I hadn't planned to submit any more updates, but something happened yesterday that I feel compelled to tell. After 4 years of fortunate silence from my family, I received a frantic phone call from my mother, leaving me feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. First, a little update on Sophia and myself. We married 2 years ago in a short ceremony attended by Chloe's family and Sophia's relatives. We purchased a home in our new location, and Sophia is now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I am still working remotely for the same company, but I was promoted to senior developer last year. We're expecting our first kid, a baby girl, in 3 months. Life has been serene and cheerful, which makes what I am about to say much more frightening. Yesterday afternoon, I was in a conference when my phone started ringing incessantly with calls from my mother. I normally disregard strange numbers because my family has a tendency of purchasing new phones to reach us, but this time she left a message that sounded truly frantic. When I called back, she was sobbing so hard that I could not hear her. Ethan married a woman named Olivia last year. We were all unaware of it because we hadn't spoken to that side of the family since the wedding. Apparently, Ethan met Olivia in church, and their families swiftly planned their marriage. My mother kept going on about how wonderful everything was, how Ethan had finally found a good Christian woman who understood him, and how they were all so happy, until last week. Olivia's coworker called the police last Thursday after she failed to show up for work for 3 days. Officers discovered Olivia seriously injured during a wellness check. She had 2 broken ribs, a shattered wrist, and several bruises across her body. But here's what really stunned me. When the police looked into it further, they discovered that my father had been assisting Ethan in concealing the abuse for months. Olivia eventually broke down and told the police everything. Ethan began striking her just 2 months after they married. Every time she threatened to leave or tell someone, my father would intervene, using his real estate contacts to push Olivia's family about their mortgage or threatening to fire her from a job at one of his friend's companies. He even persuaded Olivia's parents that she was mentally disturbed while fabricating allegations about Ethan, employing the same tactics they employed against Sophia. The final event occurred when Olivia was promoted at work, which would have provided her financial independence. Ethan lost control and thrashed her so brutally that she couldn't enter. When she called my father for assistance, he advised her to ice it and remember her wedding vows. That's when her coworker stepped in and called the police. Ethan and my father were both arrested, one for domestic abuse and the other for witness intimidation and conspiracy. My mother urged me to return and help fix things. She kept stating, "The family needs to stick together during a crisis." that Ethan and Dad needed my help, and that Olivia was obviously exaggerating everything, just like Sophia did. I lost it. I informed her how I felt about her enabling Ethan's actions throughout his childhood. I reminded her of what they did to Sophia, and how they decided to support Ethan despite witnessing him assault her at Chloe's wedding. I questioned whether she had ever considered that if they had helped Ethan when he was younger or held him accountable for his behavior, Olivia might not be in the hospital right now. My mother burst into tears, admitting that they should have acted sooner. She acknowledged that she and Dad had always known Ethan had problems, but they believed they were protecting him by keeping everything hidden. Too little, too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Chloe called me later to confirm some information she'd received from extended family. Olivia's parents are distraught and regret not believing her sooner. They totally support her in bringing accusations against both Ethan and my father. Police are also looking into potential additional victims, since numerous of Ethan's ex-girlfriends have come forward with similar allegations of abuse and stalking. Sophia proposed that we contact Olivia through Chloe and offer her assistance if she requires it, which we will most likely do. Sophia mentioned how fortunate she was to have assistance when coping with Ethan, and Olivia may need someone who understands what she's going through. Some may believe I'm being cold toward my parents, but I've learned that encouraging toxic behavior simply creates more victims. My family had numerous opportunities to change, but they decided not to. Now they can deal with the consequences of their decisions without my assistance. My goal now is to defend my own family, my wife, our unborn daughter, and the quiet life we've created away from their toxicity. Update 4. Many people have messaged me asking for updates on the situation with Ethan, my father, and Olivia, so this is what has happened in the last 6 months. First, some wonderful news from our end. 3 months ago, Sophia and I welcomed our daughter Isla. She's completely healthy and stunningly lovely. Parenthood has been incredible, and it has only confirmed that breaking connections with my problematic family was the correct decision. Chloe and her husband came to see Isla last month, and seeing them with her only confirmed what true family love is like. Now for an update on Ethan's and my father's cases. Chloe has been keeping us updated because she still maintains contact with some distant relatives. Ethan agreed to a plea deal last month. He will serve an 8-year jail sentence for serious domestic abuse, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. My father's case is still ongoing, although his attorney is apparently attempting to work out a settlement. His real estate license has been suspended pending an inquiry, and most of his business partners have parted ways with him. My mother's progress is the most startling. After our previous phone chat, she began therapy. According to Chloe, she has moved out of the family home and filed for divorce from my father last week. She sent me a 12-page letter apologizing for everything, enabling Ethan his entire life, failing to protect me as a child, and, most importantly, how they treated Sophia. She revealed that she and my father had essentially produced the monster Ethan by never holding him accountable. I have not responded to your mail. Part of me respects that she is finally confronting the truth, but it is too little, too late. Where was this understanding when Ethan was torturing animals as a kid? Or while he was stalking Sophia? Or when they witnessed him assaulting her during Chloe's wedding? Sophia and I are still talking about allowing her to have supervised contact with Isla, but that will be years away, if it ever happens. Olivia came out to us via Chloe. She is doing better. She lives with her sister in another state and is having extensive therapy. She has filed for divorce and is completely cooperating with prosecutors. According to Chloe, numerous other women have come forward with claims that Ethan mistreated them in the past, including 2 from his church. The police are looking into those situations as well. Olivia's parents have been wonderfully supportive once the truth was revealed. They publicly apologized to her for not believing her sooner and severed all connections with my parents. They're even collaborating with domestic violence organizations to help other families identify indicators of abuse and manipulation. Our extended family is fundamentally divided into 2 factions. The majority of our younger cousins and relatives have supported us and Olivia, while the older generation continues to make excuses for Ethan and my dad. Chloe's mother, my aunt, has formed a family therapy group for relatives who want to understand how things got so bad and how to make things better for future generations. Sophia and I are focused on our kid and our lives here. Sophia went back to work part-time last week and was promoted to director of pediatric nursing. I'm still working remotely, but I'm considering starting my own software consulting firm. We've created a fantastic community here, complete with amazing friends and chosen family. Sometimes I consider contacting my mother or responding to her letter, but then I look at Isla and think about how my parents would expect me to let Ethan near her if we were still in contact, claiming he deserves another chance. That thought alone reminds me that we made the right decision by staying away. The pattern of cruelty and enabling in my family ends with me. Isla will grow up in an environment that values healthy relationships and respects limits. Cutting off toxic family members is sometimes the best thing you can do for your child, no matter how painful it is. My mom said I shouldn't come for Christmas because my step-grandparents hated me and would cut their inheritance if we stayed in touch. My stepdad's parents, who despise me, would be at Christmas, so my mom told me I wasn't welcome. I severed all contact with them and withdrew their financial support, but a few months later they were at my house. Long pauses at the beginning of phone calls have always annoyed me since they seldom contain pleasant news. My mother's hesitancy on the other end of the telephone, 3 days before Christmas, told me everything I needed to know before she even said anything. Erica, honey, I think it would be better if you didn't come home for Christmas this year. I almost dropped my mug of coffee. Mom, what are you talking about? It's just, well, Richard's parents are coming and they don't want to see you, and they've made it quite clear. In an attempt to comprehend what I was hearing, I collapsed onto my couch. My stepdad, Richard, had been married to my mother since I was 10 years old, and although his parents had never been fond of me, this was different. My mother chose them over me in this situation. I tried to maintain my composure as I said, since Dad passed away, we've always celebrated Christmas together. It's our custom. I know, honey, but what? You're seriously picking other people over your own daughter? No matter what reason she offered, the silence that ensued was terrible. Her voice was strained when she did speak. Erica, they've threatened to cut Richard out of their will if they find out we're still in contact with you. They told us they won't leave him an inheritance and will stop talking to us altogether. I was going to yell. So this is about money? Quickly. No, it's not just that, she said. I've told them that we haven't been in touch with you for years. I need you to go along with this. It's just this once. There was no comedy in my laughter. You want me to pretend I don't exist in your life? That's your solution? Richard's parents are difficult people, Erica. They're spiteful and stubborn. We need to make sure they believe no one in the family talks to you anymore. You need to understand. I ended the call. I was no longer able to listen. You would have to go back more than 20 years to comprehend why Richard's parents detested me so much. When I was 4 years old, my real dad passed away in a vehicle accident. Before she met Richard, a widower with a daughter named Hannah who is 9 years old, it was just Mom and me against the world for 6 years. Richard and Hannah moved into our home after they were married. At first, everything was okay. I got along well enough with Hannah. At times, we quarreled like sisters, hurling pillows at one another and squabbling over who got the remote control, all typical child behavior. However, Richard's parents detested me from the beginning. They referred to me as impolite and unruly. They would comment, "It's obvious she grew up without a father," as if I weren't even there. They would bring Hannah gifts when they came to visit, but nothing for me. They would never speak to me, but they would chat through and around me. When I was 14, the worst of it occurred. Hannah and I were left with Richard's parents while Mom and Richard went on vacation. Normally, Mom's sister, Aunt Sarah, would host us, but she was occupied at the moment. Despite their reluctance, Richard's parents decided to have us, especially me. Hannah and I argued over the laptop after spending a week together locked up. Tensions were high and we were both really bored. I gave her a gentle shove during the fight, but she lost her equilibrium, fell awkwardly, and fractured her arm. Hannah let out a scream that had my blood run down my spine. Her grandparents rushed over. Her grandma called Richard in a fit of hysteria while her grandfather took her to the hospital. She screamed into the phone, "You have to come home now." Erica beat Hannah badly and broke her arm. She needs to be in a psychiatric clinic, she's completely out of control. Everything changed after that call. They stole my phone, locked me in a bedroom, and only unlocked the door to let food in. They referred to me as a rabid animal and threatened to put me in juvenile jail. 3 days after taking a short trip, Mom and Richard returned home. In a fit of rage, Richard claimed he couldn't trust himself around me. I was sent to spend 2 months with Aunt Sarah. Richard hardly talked to me when I got home. Ironically, the incident strengthened our bond, and Hannah and I swiftly reconciled. I never had anger management difficulties, so my parents had me go to therapy. After that, the atmosphere at home was oppressive. It was like fleeing prison when I turned 18 and moved to a different place for college. I only communicated with Mom and Hannah when I was in college. I worked really hard to succeed while studying management and administration. My buddy Olivia and I were able to secure internships at her father's restaurant company during our junior year. Everyone was taken aback by the development plan I created. Profits increased in a matter of months when it did work. Olivia's father gave me a job opportunity when I graduated. Olivia wanted me to be her executive director when he turned over the restaurant management business to her. I would effectively be her right-hand lady, in charge of modernization and business development. I changed that chain of restaurants with Olivia. We built a mobile app, established food delivery services, and set up areas where patrons could use laptops to place food orders. In order to demonstrate how hygienic and effective the kitchens were, we set up live stream cameras in each restaurant, created designated areas for selfies, and began culinary lessons. Young folks began to pour in. We drew in a ton of new clients while retaining the old ones. When business took off, I was suddenly paid more than I could have ever imagined. I had savings for the first time in my life. At that point, Mom called to discuss Richard's work-related issues. She said that he had been fired. We're struggling to make the mortgage payments. Richard then picked up the phone. Erica, I'm sorry for everything. You're our only hope right now. I thus consented to assist. I sent them money each month to cover their mortgage. I continued to pay even after Richard eventually secured part-time employment. I didn't find it difficult, and they had become accustomed to the assistance. I believed I was purchasing a stronger bond with them. I was mistaken. I spent what seemed like hours sitting on my couch, staring at my phone after that terrible chat with Mom. My mind was jumbled. I needed someone who would listen to me. I rang Hannah's phone. Hey sis, what's up? Hannah's upbeat tone was a stark contrast to my own emotions. Mom just called. I answered, a little trembling in my voice. She told me not to come home for Christmas because your grandparents will be there. Your grandparents threatened to cut Richard out of their will if they found out they still talked to me. Apparently, she's been telling them for years that they don't have any contact with me. Hannah seldom ever used profanity. That, she said. What the hell is wrong with them? She wants me to play along, I said. Pretend I'm not part of the family anymore, so your grandparents will leave the money someday. Hannah answered, well, the hell with it, with firmness. If you're not welcome there, then I'm not coming either. If they're choosing money over you, then they can do Christmas without both of us. My eyes filled with tears. Hannah was the one member of my family who always had my back, even after everything we had been through. I felt a little better once I hung up with Hannah. I gave some friends I knew had no family Christmas plans a call. By the end of the evening, Hannah and 5 of my friends and I had planned an unplanned orphan Christmas at my flat. Hannah showed in the day before Christmas with a bag full of decorations and a little suitcase. She exclaimed, I raided the dollar store, when she threw tinsel and glittery decorations on my coffee table. Your place needs some Christmas spirit. We drank wine, caught up, and decorated my apartment that evening. Neither of us brought up Richard, Mom, or the inheritance issue. For a few hours, nothing had changed. The formal, stressful events we had experienced as children at home were not at all like Christmas Day. Around noon, my pals showed up with food, beverages, or games. We probably drank more than we should have, ate too much, and laughed too loudly. It was authentic, yet it wasn't conventional. Even Hannah acknowledged at the conclusion of the evening that it was the finest Christmas she had experienced in a long time. Naturally, though, reality has a way of getting in the way. Before going to bed, I was browsing Instagram when I came upon a post from Mom. In their living room, she was grinning beside Richard's parents, who were all dressed in similar Christmas sweaters. It said, "So blessed to spend this special day with family." Family. The word made my stomach turn like a dagger. I was no longer family. It was inconvenient to conceal the truth about me. That night, I was unable to sleep. Every monthly mortgage payment I'd been making and the Instagram post kept playing back in my head. I believed I was mending old wounds and constructing bridges each time I sent that money. I now saw that I had only been purchasing the false sense of family. The following morning, I decided. I canceled the automatic transfer to my parents' mortgage account by using my banking app. I was tired of being exploited, even if it was small. It was 2 weeks later. Thankful for the post-holiday influx of new restaurant patrons who had made New Year's resolves to try new places, I poured myself into my work. I welcomed the diversion as Olivia and I worked on plans to open a new site. Then Mom called. A part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, but I almost didn't respond. She said, "Erica, there's a problem with the mortgage payment," without even extending a greeting. "Did you forget to send it?" "I didn't forget," I answered, maintaining a steady tone. "I canceled it." Silence fell for a beat. "What do you mean you canceled it?" "I mean I'm not paying your mortgage anymore," she said in a panic. "But we're counting on that money. The payment is due today." "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me for your in-laws' money," I replied. "You chose them over me. Now you can ask them to pay your mortgage." "This is about Christmas, Erica. You're being childish." We explained why. "You explained that money is more important to you than I am." "I am message received." Then her voice shifted from one of terror to one of accusation. "I know what you did. You convinced Hannah not to come for Christmas. You turned her against us." "What I didn't do, you know? What I had to tell Richard's parents? That she was seriously ill? I had to lie and make up a whole story because of you. What I was hearing was unbelievable. You've gone mad because of this inheritance thing. Normal people don't invent illnesses for their children, Mom. They don't disown them for money." "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom, besides kick me out of Christmas and lie about my existence?" She ended the call. The months that followed were calm. I didn't get in touch, and Mom didn't call again. Hannah stayed in contact and went to visit whenever she could. She had turned into the only family member who had not betrayed me and my only true link to my former existence. I threw myself into new initiatives and concentrated on my work. Olivia and I opened a new restaurant across town as part of our restaurant brand expansion. It was a good business. Life was steady. However, when I thought about my family, I still felt empty. Then Hannah called one evening in late April. "Hey, I'm going to come visit you tomorrow. Is that okay?" Her voice seemed strange, but I didn't press the issue. When Hannah felt like it, she had always been straightforward. My doorbell rang shortly after noon the following day. When I opened it, Mom and Richard were standing there in addition to Hannah. I took a step back and nearly slammed the door, asking myself, "What the hell?" Hannah raised her hands. "Hear them out, Erica, please." It was clear from their faces, Hannah's begging, Richard's uneasiness, and Mom's anxiety, that this would not be a quick chat. I suppose they were strangers by now because they filed into my living room like strangers. Mom held her handbag close to her chest. Awkwardly, Richard stood beside the window. Hannah cleared her throat. "So, I think Mom and Dad have something they want to say." Mom inhaled deeply. "Erica, we came to apologize. What I did at Christmas was wrong." She appeared to think that was sufficient, but I waited for more. "That's it?" I inquired at last. "We're missing you," Richard continued. "The house isn't the same without you." I didn't care that my voice was rising. "The house I wasn't welcome in at Christmas? The house where you pretend I don't exist whenever your parents visit? You're going to have to do better than we miss you." Hannah put her hand on my arm. "Let him finish, Erica." Mom gave a clumsy smile. "You're right to be angry. We betrayed you. I betrayed you. I put money ahead of my own daughter, and I've been sick about it ever since. Your financial assistance is no longer required," Richard stated. "I found a new job, Better than the old one. We're managing the mortgage payments just fine. That's not why we're here. I said. Then why are you here? Because we're family, her voice cracked. And we almost threw that away. For what? For my in-laws' approval? For money we might get someday? It was wrong. I hesitated because of something about her genuineness. I had been prepared for manipulations, guilt trips, and justifications. I wasn't expecting real regret. I asked Richard, what about your parents? They still planning to write you out of the will if they find out we talk? Richard's gaze shifted to his hands. I called them after you stopped sending money. Told them I wasn't going to pretend anymore, that you're my daughter too. They flew off the handle, threatened to disown me, just like they said they would. We had a huge fight. So what changed? I did, said Hannah. I called Grandma and Grandpa and told them I knew everything, that I fully supported you and Dad, and if they couldn't accept you as part of our family, then they'd lose me too. Mom gave a nod. They called back 3 days later. Said they'd calmed down and were willing to accept things. They're not ready to lose Hannah. I was at a loss for words. I wanted my family back, therefore I wanted to forgive them. Another part recalled how effortlessly they'd ignored me when it suited them. I was honest when I said, I don't know if I can trust you again. You shut me out when it suited you. What happens next time they threaten to cut you off? Mom said. There won't be a next time. We've drawn a line. You're our daughter, and that's non-negotiable. I glanced at Mom, whose eyes were full of tears, then at Richard, who appeared more sincere than I'd seen him in years, and finally at Hannah, who gave me a supportive nod. I said, I'm not saying everything's fine now, with caution. It's going to take time, but I'm willing to try. Mom sobbed and came running to give me a hug. I didn't want to fully surrender, so I stayed rigid in her arms. When Mom eventually let me go, Richard remarked, We've been looking into family therapy, all 4 of us, to work through the old stuff, not just this recent mess. Therapy? My astonishment was evident. When I was a teenager, Richard had always laughed at my forced anger management classes. Hannah said, It was Dad's idea, with a proud expression on her face. He says we all have baggage we need to unpack. Richard said, I should have defended you years ago. After the accident with Hannah's arm, I knew it wasn't your fault, but I let my parents dictate how I treated you. That wasn't right. I reflected on the years I had spent trying to gain his approval, the therapy sessions in which counselors attempted to fix me when I wasn't damaged, and the fact that I had continued to provide for them financially in the hopes that they would still love me. Hours of agonizing but important discourse lasted that evening. We discussed the Christmas betrayal that had been the final straw, the past scars I believed had healed but obviously hadn't, and what it would take to regain trust. We had a plan by the time they departed, which included regular dinners for the 4 of us, no in-laws allowed, weekly family therapy sessions beginning the following month, and explicit rules about what was and wasn't appropriate moving forward. It was a start, but it wasn't forgiveness yet. Hannah remained after they left. With the familiarity of a sister who knew she was welcome, she fell into my couch. You okay? She inquired. I don't know, was my honest response. Part of me wants to believe them. Another part is waiting for the other shoe to drop. She pulled at a loose thread on my throw cushion and said, I understand that. For what it's worth, I think they mean it this time. You should have seen Mom after Christmas. She was a mess, kept saying she'd made a horrible mistake. Did they ask you to arrange this? Hannah gave a headshake. It was my idea. I was tired of being the go-between, of hearing them talk about how much they missed you while knowing they'd hurt you so badly. I reclined, suddenly worn out. I'm not sure family therapy is going to fix everything. Probably not, added Hannah, but it's a step. And I'll be there too, making sure they don't backslide. Regardless of blood, I grinned at my sister, my true sister. When did you get so wise? Learn from the best, she replied, putting her hand on my shoulder. You never gave up on me, even when we were kids and I was a total brat. Now it's my turn to not give up on this family. After Hannah departed that evening, I sat by myself in my apartment contemplating forgiveness, second chances, and family, both the one you choose and the one you are born into. I wasn't sure if I was prepared to give my parents back complete control. Once lost, trust is difficult to rebuild. But perhaps, just perhaps, we could use the fragments of what had been destroyed to create something new. As you can anticipate, the first family therapy session was quite uncomfortable. We were asked to gather in a circle and discuss our expectations with Dr. Levine, a kind-eyed, no-nonsense woman in her 50s. Mom wiped at her eyes and whispered, "I just want my family back." "I want to understand why I was so easily disposable," I replied. Richard stirred uneasily. "I want to be a better father to both my daughters." "Always the mediator," Hannah declared. "I want us to be honest with each other. No more secrets or lies." Dr. Levine gave a nod. "Those are all valid desires. This won't be easy, but acknowledging what you want is a good start." We had frequent meetings throughout the ensuing weeks. We continued to show up even though the sessions occasionally turned into arguments or tears. We slowly and carefully worked through years of miscommunications, grudges, and anxieties. We discussed how Richard's parents had used their inheritance as a weapon to dominate the family, why I had felt obligated to provide for them despite everything that had transpired, and the Christmas treachery that had finally crushed me. We began repairing our relationship in little steps outside of treatment. Mom used to call just to talk. Richard believed I might find the restaurant management articles he provided me interesting. Hannah and I continued to have a closer sisterly closeness than before. After 2 months of treatment, Richard's disclosure about his own upbringing was a turning point. "My parents always used money to control me," he recalled as a schoolboy. "If I didn't behave exactly as they wanted, they'd threaten to cut me off. When I wanted to marry my first wife, they threatened to disinherit me because they didn't approve of her. I stood my ground then, but after she died, I guess I didn't have the fight left in me, so when they started treating Erica the same way." He looked at me with sincere regret as he confessed, "I fell back into old patterns." At Dr. Levine's prompting, "I'm so sorry, Erica. I failed you." That day, something changed within me. For the first time, I saw Richard as someone who had been controlled his entire life, just like I had been, rather than as the stepfather who had deceived me. Better was due to both of us. By the 3rd month of therapy, I informed him, we were prepared to put our new family dynamics to the test in the real world. Mom asked me to join them for dinner in the house where I grew up. It had been before Christmas when I last visited. Anxiety made my stomach turn as I pulled into the driveway. What if Richard's parents appeared out of the blue? What if this whole thing was a sophisticated ruse? However, the scent of my favorite dish, Mom's lasagna, greeted me as soon as I entered, and the dining room was adorned with pictures. Pictures of Hannah and I together, pictures of me graduating from college, and pictures of the 4 of us in better times. Mom said, "We put these back up," as she followed my eyes. "They belong here, you belong here." It seemed like progress, even if there were still awkward pauses and moments when old tensions threatened to reappear during dinner. Richard pulled me aside after supper. After saying, "I need to show you something," he ushered me into his office. He had a legal paper on his desk. I said, "What's this?" "I've been working with a lawyer to ensure that whatever happens with my parents' inheritance won't affect what I leave to you and Hannah. You'll both be treated equally in my will, no matter what." I was dumbfounded when I looked at him. "It's not about the money," he rapidly explained. "It's about making sure you know that you are my daughter, Erica, not by blood but by choice. And nothing, not my parents, not their money, will ever change that again." I cried then, even though I didn't weep much. That night, I contacted Hannah on the way home. I informed her, "You won't believe what just happened," as I described the events of the night. "I believe it," she declared. "Dad's been working on that thing for weeks. He wanted it to be perfect for you." I asked out loud, "When did everything change so much?" After Hannah said, "When you stood up for yourself. You showed them they couldn't have it both ways. They couldn't treat you like garbage and still expect your financial support. It made them realize what they were losing." She was correct. I had forced them to make a decision by emotionally and financially cutting them off. Surprisingly, they had picked me. Dr. Levine requested us to discuss our progress at the following treatment session. "I've learned that I can't control how others treat me, but I can control how I respond," I replied. I don't have to keep paying, literally or figuratively, for people to love me. I've learned that I married a strong woman, Richard stated, addressing his mother, who raised an even stronger daughter, and that standing up to my parents was long overdue. I've learned that family isn't just about blood or obligation, Mom said. It's a choice we make every day. Hannah grinned. I've learned that my sister is a badass who doesn't take crap from anyone anymore. That made us all laugh. We all gathered to dinner at a brand new restaurant that my employer had opened 6 months after Christmas that nearly killed our family. I came to the crucial realization that we were no longer the same family as previously as we sat around the table laughing and telling stories. The foundation of the family had been fear, duty, and unspoken grudges. It wasn't flawless. We still experienced horrible days. Even though Richard's parents had been relatively silent since our reunion, they were still a complex part of our lives. Sometimes old hurts come back. However, we were determined to resolve it together. And that was what made all the difference, I was starting to think. I bought a condo with a parking spot but was told to pay $175 per month or my car would be towed even though I legally owned the spot. Original post. I bought my condo brand new in 2014. It was a small building, approximately 32 units on 4 floors. It is in a really nice location and I paid a fair amount for my unit. When I first moved in, we had a condo management company who did a fine job. Unfortunately, late last year, we discovered at the board meeting that someone had now owned over 50% of the condos. This person is someone who on several occasions had tried to pressure me into selling my condo to her. She was offering less than what I paid, and I wouldn't be able to find an equivalent condo in the same area for the amount she was offering. This person basically voted by herself to dissolve the condo board and elected herself as the sole person in charge of everything. Today I received a letter from our new condo overlord which states, by March 1st our parking spots are no longer going to be available. If we want to keep our spots, we must pay $175 per month. Failure to do so will result in our cars being towed. I have paperwork from when I bought my condo. Parking spot number 3C was included in my purchase. When I pointed this out to her about this, I was told to more or less go fuck myself, and if my car is there on March 1st it will be towed. I basically have a single day to figure out what to do. Since this comes into effect tomorrow, do I go try to find legal advice right now? Relevant comments. Comment. You definitely need a lawyer. The condo board must comprise at least 3 owners, and must act in the best interests of all owners. There are provisions in the Condo Act to force a board to do things or not do things. In one case, the board was ordered to personally pay legal costs and the costs of restoring a parking lot to its original condition. I am going to meet one tomorrow for a consultation. I managed to get 2 other owners to go on board with us fighting it. However, I did find out that the board does actually have 3 owners. One of them is apparently her husband, and the other is someone who is related to her. Neither she or her husband actually live in the building. OOP added more on what the new owner has done to the complex. I am probably going to move because everything is going to shit. She has done almost no maintenance, and the person who was responsible for cleaning the general use areas was let go. We have had 2 of the 6 washing machines broken since Christmas. If my car is towed tomorrow, what legal recourse do I have? Because according to what is written down on my ownership is I own spot number 3C. Edit. I have managed to get 3 other people in our building together to go see a lawyer tomorrow. To explain a few things, I do have a title to my parking spot. That from my understanding basically says I own that parking spot. We only have around approximately 18 parking spots, and there are more tenants than spots available. I have nowhere to park aside from my parking lot. Street parking is basically good for an hour tops, and trying to find a place is like looking for a needle in a haystack. I found out today she isn't the sole overlord of our condo board. Apparently the other 2 board members, one is her husband and the other is related to her. Her husband owns a towing company. Apparently someone is moving into the building tomorrow and has paid for my spot, so if I am not gone by midnight she is towing my car. Update. I wanted to thank everyone for the advice. Me and several other tenants got on board with a lawyer, who promptly wrote her a rather verbal letter, which kindly and suggestively told her to pound sand. Since that letter she has completely stopped and retracted all her statements about parking no longer being ours. On top of this, one of the other tenants apparently tipped off a Toronto newspaper. I haven't seen an article, however. In response to this, it seems like she has completely changed her mind, launching a policy on maintaining the building. Now we have someone who actually seems to come every day to properly perform cleaning and maintenance. Sadly, regardless of all these changes, I am planning on getting out ASAP, because unfortunately I feel after a few months she will probably change her mind, now opinion on everything. Edit: I forgot to mention, on the night she threatened to have people's cars towed, both me and another person recorded the tow truck driver trying to set up a tow for my neighbor's car. After confronting the tow truck driver about how he was illegally trying to tow someone's car, he immediately took off. We passed that along to the lawyer. My stepmother always acted sweet in front of others, but behind closed doors, she quietly pushed me aside and favored her own children. My dad would say I'm his biggest disappointment at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Not due to legal issues. Not because I'm jobless. Not because I've done something wrong. Because I lived my life my way instead of following his plan. My father, James, likes things his way. Control, looks, and family devotion have always been his priorities, as long as it benefits him. When my parents divorced, I was 10. Externally, the divorce was not ugly. But my dad moved swiftly. He remarried Stephanie, a mother of Hunter and Olivia, within a year. After that, everything changed. I tried hard at first. As a child, I wanted my dad to be happy. Stephanie was fake sweetly lovely. Overly exuberant in public, often claiming to be trying to blend the family. She hugged me too firmly and said, "I just know we're going to be best friends." However, behind closed doors, she clearly prioritized her kids. After always being involved in my life, my dad had new priorities. He became their father from mine. It started with tiny things like missing my soccer games but never Hunter's. Not picking me up from school yet always being on time for Olivia's dance recital. It intensified. By 14, I was expected to babysit, help with duties they never had to do, and appear like a good big sister while they got away with everything. If I protested, my dad would sigh like I was exhausted and say, "They need more attention. You're old. Be mature." Stephanie took a more direct approach. She called me selfish. My dad depleted my mom's college savings account, the final straw. Mom battled hard in court to get that money back. However, the harm was done. I was mad. Last year of high school, I scarcely spoke to him. I returned only for holidays after leaving for college, which I funded for myself. My relationship with him never restored after years. I still received family function invitations, but they always felt like a chore. I could tell my dad and Stephanie saw me as the problematic child who refused to play happy family. Hunter and Olivia were golden children. It's my dad's birthday party. Stephanie was planning an extravagant, invite everyone we ever met party for him. Going wasn't my plan. My aunt, one of my few allies, persuaded me. "Just stop by for a while," she added. Maybe things changed. No, they hadn't. I sensed it when I entered. That familiar, unwanted strain. Long-lost friends were there. I got polite nods instead of hearty greetings. Everyone talked around me, but no one included me. I spotted my dad laughing with old acquaintances across the room. When he saw me, his smile wavered for a moment, like he was surprised I showed arrived. I regretted coming when I saw a small table at the entryway. Name tags existed. Stephanie said this helped people mingle at earlier occasions. It was hers. Most tags were typical. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. I spotted mine. I froze. It wasn't only my name on my tag. It mentioned something else, something stomach-turning. Staring at it, I lifted it up. From across the room, I heard a familiar laugh. Stephanie. She watched me. She holds a wine glass with a grin. My chest heated as I grasped the name tag. The outcome was not what she expected. I held the name tag for a second. My brain took longer to digest what I saw. My name. But someone wrote below in smaller letters. The letdown. It seemed like a joke at first. An offensive joke. Possibly a cousin being silly. Maybe a mishap. Stephanie laughed though. She was across the room at the bar when I looked up. She sipped wine carelessly. Met eyes. A slow, contented grin grew across her face. I felt my pulse in my ears. Several folks observed me standing there. A few glances at me. I felt it even if no one spoke. This is expected. Don't cause a scene that was almost audible. The name tag was returned to the table after a deep breath. I streamlined it to match the others. I nearly laughed. Of course, naturally, she did this. It was typical Stephanie, not insulting. Something not obvious enough to call her out on. Something subtle enough to make me look like the problem if I reacted. I should have known something like this was coming when I entered. A hand stroked my shoulder, and I looked to my aunt, the only family member who had ever understood me. Her lips were tightly lined and brows pulled together. She noticed the name tag. She glanced at Stephanie. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I smiled tightly. "Yeah," replied. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. I was tired. I was exhausted beyond words. Because it was old. This wasn't her worst act. This continued a long tradition of ensuring my place. I should have left then. I should have turned around and fled. Some part of me said no. This time, no. Instead, I took a big breath, straightened my shoulders, and did something I knew would surprise them. I grinned. A natural smile, like nothing had happened. Taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, I softly clinked it with my nail and looked toward the room. Because I would give Stephanie a show if she wanted one. I raised my drink slightly, felt the atmosphere move as a few folks looked my way. I hadn't reacted yet. The gentle clink of my nail against the glass was enough to grab attention. Stephanie hesitated for a moment before taking another leisurely drink of wine, her eyes narrowing as if attempting to figure out what I was doing. I considered making a toast, but I gave a tiny shake of my head and turned away to continue the celebration. I wouldn't let her react. Not yet. Everything was as expected at the celebration. Crowded. Too polished. Expensive catering. Decorated with care. Stephanie always went all out since everything in her life was a performance. I didn't only celebrate Dad's birthday, it was for show. About spreading the word about her ideal life. She and my father adored each other. How successful their kids were. Their offspring, not me. Hunter and Olivia were already in the middle of the room, surrounded by a few relatives nodding as Olivia talked about her wedding. And of course Dad's paying for everything. She smiled as she twisted the huge diamond on her finger. We wanted something tasteful, you know. A real elegant wedding. Not one of those tacky Pinterest disasters. I chuckled. Olivia was always like this, polished, rehearsed. She was self-absorbed enough to make sure everything swirled around her without being obvious. Hunter leaned against the bar, nodding as my dad's old acquaintances congratulated him on his new position. Which I knew he hadn't earned. Hunter had never worked. He was given every chance. My father quietly corrected every error. I considered walking over to join the conversation to watch them wiggle. Before I could, my father spoke. "Ah," he said. He was approaching when I turned. He held a drink, his look neutral. "I didn't think you were going to come." I smiled, but not really. "Wouldn't miss it." He nodded and looked around before staring at me. "You've been keeping busy, I hear." It existed. He politely avoided asking about my life. He always did. I nodded. "Yeah, work's been good. I bought a house last year." He raised his brow. "A house?" "Yep." Sipping his drink, he asked nothing else. One thing about my dad. Whenever I did anything that prevented him from seeing me as a failure, he loathed me. Every time I did something without his money or aid, it eroded his narrative about myself. I was lost. Selfish. Immature. He disliked that. He liked the me he could shake his head at. The version he could pitifully describe when asked about me. He was obviously thinking of something to say. A sly dig. Stephanie's voice severed the talk like a knife before he could. "Well," she remarked, standing up behind him, "at least she finally did something responsible." Just then, my chest started heating up again. I went to her and saw her beaming, like she was so thrilled to see me. I recognized the look. I'd seen it 100 times. Stephanie would insult you in person, and if you got offended, you were the problem. It was a joke. You were oversensitive. I should have left. Should have let go. But I didn't. Because everything about this night, about everything was off. Possibly the name tag. Maybe it was because my dad seldom spoke to me before ignoring me. Maybe it was the fact that the room was full of individuals who were never my relatives. Whatever. I was done. I tilted my head at Stephanie. I said, "You know, I was going to let it go, quietly. But I have to ask. Whose idea was the name tag?" I saw a little spark on her face. "Oh, come on," she laughed. "You always take things so personally. It was funny." I nodded. "Right. Hilarious." Sipping wine, she shrugged. "You know, if you spent less time being angry all the time, maybe you'd be—" I cut her off with a finger. "Actually," I answered calmly, "I think you're right." She narrowed her eyes. "About what?" "About making a joke," I turned, raising my glass. "Because now that I think about it, I have a joke too." She blinked in surprise. My father shifted awkwardly beside her. My smile was slow and comfortable. "I'd like to make a toast." Suddenly, the room quieted. Not all at once, not now. As inquisitive individuals looked at me, talk slowed. Because people adore toasts, especially surprise ones. I felt my father tighten beside me. Stephanie giggled and shifted her weight to ignore me. "Oh, come on, you don't have to." I smiled and extended my hand. "No, really. I insist." With more people looking at me and whispering curiously, the room altered. Some attendees grabbed their drinks for a light-hearted toast. What was coming was unknown. Stephanie's smile tightened, but she kept her cool, believing I was the same person she'd always known. The individual who took every insult, let everything go, and never fought back. My dad got more agitated. He knew me better than she. He tightened his glass grip and looked at me for the first time all evening, not through me, around me, or at me. I raised my glass after letting the silence build, building anticipation. "To my father," I said, almost chattily. "And to Stephanie, of course. Because without them, I don't think I would have learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life." I sipped champagne slowly. Stephanie breathed a little laugh. "Oh boy, here we go." A few laughed. They assumed they were joking. They believed I was going to make fun of myself or smooth things over like usual. I grinned. "No, really, I mean it. Because I think we often learn the most from the people who challenge us, don't you?" I looked at my dad. "Dad, you always told me that family is supposed to build each other up. That we should support one another. Celebrate each other's successes." My father's throat bobbed as he swallowed, strengthening his drink grasp. He didn't like the direction. I said, "And I used to believe that. I really did. But then, somewhere along the way, I realized something." The room was nearly silent. Stephanie's fingers were so tight around her wine glass stem that I thought it would break. I gently placed my glass on the table next to me. I realized that for some people, support only exists when you fit into the version of yourself they want you to be. That as long as you play the role they've written for you, whether it's the golden child or the black sheep, they'll keep you right where they need you. And if you step outside that role— I shook my head and exhaled hard. "Well, that's when they show you how they really feel." A few unpleasant crowd shifts were heard, looking at each other. Olivia awaits my father's response before determining how to feel. Hunter smiled like this was his entertainment. Stephanie smiled, but her knuckles were white. "I used to think that if I just proved myself, if I worked hard, if I was successful, if I played by the rules, you'd see me differently," I murmured, softening but not slowing. "But I get it now. It was never about me. It was never about what I did or didn't do." Stephanie spoke, likely to interrupt me. But I stopped her. I returned to my dad. "Because I was never intended to succeed, right?" His expression briefly changed. I exhaled and rolled my shoulders after letting that hang. "But I did. I built something for myself. I made a life that has nothing to do with this family. And let me tell you, it's been the most peaceful, fulfilling thing I've ever done." I could sense people's doubts and interest since they didn't understand what I was saying. I was tired of letting them believe Stephanie and my father's years-long construction of me. Stephanie forced another laugh to recover control. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. It's just a name tag. I looked at her. You're right, I answered effortlessly. It is. But it's also a pattern. A lifetime of moments just like this. Little digs, little jokes, little ways of reminding me that no matter what I do, in your eyes, I'll always be the disappointment. Dad cleared his throat and stepped forward. That's enough. Met his gaze directly. Oh, I agree. It is enough. Before anyone could grasp what was occurring, I took up my glass again. It was slightly elevated to let my next remark settle over the room. To the last time you'll ever see me? A deafening hush. My father was tense. Stephanie lowered her jaw before closing it. Somebody in the back said, "Wait, what?" I put my drink down, turned around, and headed for the door without saying a word. I felt their gaze. Can feel panic setting in. Because this was different. One last peek back before entering. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving a fight. Walking toward something. Toward freedom. Toward peace. I was establishing a life away from my family's problems. Walking outside, I inhaled the crisp night air. It ended. Years earlier, I should have cut ties. No more pretense. No more attempting to please folks who never cared about me unless I fit their ideal. My shoulders felt lighter with each mile as I drove home that night in silence. However, as I sat in my peaceful living room that evening, I wondered whether I had gone too far. Was my decision right? Was I too harsh? The next several days were filled with texts and calls. I remained silent. I avoided social media, because I knew it was full of consequences. I skipped my dad's birthday party. I publicly shamed him and Stephanie, his wife, my stepmother. I always thought the woman was pushing me aside for her ideal world. The family group chat was full of messages, but I kept quiet, unsure if I could handle the encounter. Finally, my aunt, the only person who understood me, texted me to check if I was okay. Not knowing what to say. I was okay. I felt better in years, but also uncertain. Told her I needed time. Not pressing. Dad called me the next morning. "Where are you?" he questioned in his usual tone, which usually made me feel like I had disappointed him. "I'm home," I said. "I'm not coming back." I only needed his silence. "You can't just leave like this," he continued after a moment. "This family, we have to stick together." There was no hesitation. Not if sticking together means pretending to be someone I'm not. Not anymore. It was our last conversation. I avoided all family events, weddings, birthday celebrations, and whatever else they planned, for weeks. The rest of my family either agreed with my dad and Stephanie's perception of me or pretended nothing had happened. The grapevine told me my dad was hurt. Stephanie was outraged. My brother and sister disapproved of my scene. None of it disturbed me. I knew my decision was right, for me. I continued living. Still strong. Although cutting them off was difficult, I experienced a sense of tranquility I hadn't felt in years. No family member has talked to me since then. So I ask, am I a whole? For leaving like that? For toasting and totally chopping them off? Did I overreach? Am I justified in finally sticking up for myself? I'll never please my dad. I won't be his daughter. However, I may have realized that I no longer need to be. Reddit, inform me. Was my behavior inappropriate? Was this overdue? 8 months pregnant, I brought my kids home hoping for a warm Christmas. One look inside and I knew we were not welcome. I realized we didn't belong as soon as the door opened. With wine glasses already poured, each seat identified precisely, and all the other grandchildren sat and smiling like a stock photo family, the table was arranged like a magazine spread. My brother was also present. The golden boy. Enjoying the warmth of his most recent promotion. When he saw me enter with the children, he even had the gall to chuckle. "Oh," Dad murmured, his face pressed hard and his arms folded. "We didn't anticipate your arrival." "Yeah, obviously," Bryce said, laughing aloud, arrogantly and theatrically. "Why is she in this place?" He smiled as if I were the office intern who happened to walk into a board meeting by mistake. I waited for Mom to say something, anything at all, but she kept moving napkins around as if the symmetry of the forks were more significant than her real daughter, who was standing at the door with two bewildered children. As if that resolved the matter, Dad murmured, "There aren't any seats left. No happy Christmas. No embracing the children. Nothing at all." "Well, you can come in, but the kids will have to sit somewhere else," he said, sounding benevolent. At the table already were the other grandchildren. Of course, Bryce's children. The grandchildren were the important ones. I tasted blood because I bit my tongue so hard. I didn't speak louder. I refrained from crying. Calm as ever, I simply smiled at Bryce. "I suppose I'm useless now that Bryce has a fancy title, huh?" Bryce gave an eye roll. "Helpful? Nobody requested your assistance." "That's perfect." I took my phone out of my coat pocket. "Nice to know," I answered with ease. "That implies that I will no longer be making mortgage payments." There was silence, as if I had turned off the lights on the Christmas tree. Dad's expression went cold. In fact, Mom stopped fiddling with her forks. Suddenly less arrogant, Bryce sat up straighter. "You're kidding," he stated bluntly. I gave a headshake. "Number, you seem to be well without me now. You are therefore on your own." I looked at my children. "Come on. We're heading home." "Wait," Mom said at last, her voice trembling. "Are you really going to leave?" I remarked, "You just said we weren't welcome," as I started to go toward the door. "I'm paying attention." My younger sister, Marley, was standing in the corner just before I left. She remained silent. She simply stood there with her hands in her hoodie pockets, her eyes downcast, and her face etched with humiliation. I didn't let her stop me. Nobody did. It was a calm drive home. The kind of silence that, even when the radio is on, crackles. Grasping the present bag we were never able to offer, my youngest gazed out the window. Without a word, my oldest leaned his head against the seat. Even though he didn't yet have the words, I could see he understood. What prevented Grandpa from wanting us there? My child requested in a tiny voice. My hands remained solid on the steering wheel. I said, "Because some people lose the ability to be kind. However, we don't. We recall." "Belly first," Caleb greeted us at the entrance. "How was it then?" I arched an eyebrow. "We arrived without an invitation." His jaw fell. "You're not serious." I gave a headshake. I then severed the cord. "No more mortgage payments. Allow Bryce to solve it." Caleb blinked. "You actually did that?" I gave a nod. "Directly before the Christmas ham." After giving me a long look, he just muttered, "Damn," and gave me a shoulder rub. I must admit that I felt lighter. No more guilt trips from Mom about how difficult things have been, and no more sporadic calls from Dad requesting a small transfer. My family only recognized me when they were broke, so I could finally sleep at night without worrying about whether they were draining my bank account. A week went by. Then my phone chimed one night just after midnight. Once. Twice. Then 4 more times. I never even checked. I recognized the person already. "Mom." I allowed it to ring. Caleb groaned as he rolled over next to me. She is tenacious. One more buzz. It was a message this time, but not from her. From Marley. "Pick up. It's serious." My stomach nodded. I made a call. Marley responded right away, breathing rapidly. "It's Dad. He has aches in his chest. Mom is going crazy." In bed, I sat up. "Did she make a 911 call?" "Number, she gave me a call. Then you." "She did, of course." Marley paused. "She started by trying Bryce. He didn't respond. He hasn't given her a call since Christmas," she said. "Ever since his dismissal." I blinked. "Hold on. What?" Marley let out a breath. "Indeed. He was fired. He was set up by a guy he believed he was dating. Some sort of fraud. He could be sued." Back against the headboard, I sank. Karma, eh? This year, it was quick and on time. "She would like you to attend," Marley said quietly. I shut my eyes. To be clear, I wasn't cold-hearted. However, it was difficult to ignore the picture of me standing in that hallway with my children gripping my coat and hearing that there was no space for us. I sighed nonetheless. I'll be there. I didn't let Caleb stop me. Don't let them pull you back in, he said as he kissed my forehead. I arrived without a knock. With one hand on his chest and perspiration streaming down his cheeks, Dad was slumped in a recliner. It appeared as though Mom had been crying for hours. Panic was thick in the air. Thank God, she said, hurrying toward me. Your dad is having trouble breathing. Have you made an ambulance call? She blinked. I assumed you. I took my phone out. Really, Mom? The paramedics arrived quickly, hooked him up. Vitals were checked. One said, it's not a heart attack. However, his blood pressure is really high. Caused by stress. I gave a snort. Startling. They removed him. Mom looked at me as if I were a lifeline while she stood there wringing her hands. She muttered, we need help. I gave her a direct look. No. She recoiled as if I had given her a slap. However, I didn't feel bad for once. I was liberated. Have you ever watched someone drop a dish, watch it break, and then merely take a step back and blame gravity instead of picking it up? My family was like that. For 2 days following the hospital event, everything was oddly silent. No phone calls. Don't text. Perhaps, I thought, they had accepted it? That I had finished. That what I said was true. Naturally, I was mistaken. Marley's appearance at my door was the first step. Dark circles, a pulled-up sweatshirt, and a habit of gnawing on the inside of her cheek as if it were owed money made her appear as though she hadn't slept in days. She was carrying a rumpled envelope in one hand and stuffed the other deep in her coat pocket. I pulled the door open. Is everything all right? Explain okay, she murmured as she entered. The envelope fell to the kitchen table. Mom said that. I kept my hands off of it. She said you would block her number, so she asked me to deliver it personally. Yes, I did. Marley let out a sigh. She is in a difficult situation. Dad is still being monitored at the hospital. They are unable to stabilize his blood pressure. When you try to support yourself with your children and one of them eventually says no, that's what happens. Marley took a quick look at the infant crib that Caleb and I had partially put together earlier. They assumed you would give in? Well, I said, they made a bad gamble. Then she let the hammer fall. Bryce spent the money from the mortgage. I went cold. What? The final payment, the money you sent them. The mortgage was never paid. Bryce received it from them. My molars screamed as my jaw clamped so tightly. Everything? Almost $5,000, she said with a nod. Mom told me that since he recently received a promotion, they offered him the money to help him advance. He went on a weekend trip with that guy, bought some furniture, and then everything fell apart. My stomach dropped. And now? The promotion has now ended. The man abandoned him. He is also being investigated. The business believes he participated in a conspiracy to transfer funds using fictitious vendor invoices. However, it turns out that he was only the fall guy. He was, of course. I laughed resentfully. To be clear, they stole money from their daughter, who has 2 children and a baby on the way, and gave it to their son, who lost his job and could face legal action. I'm supposed to tidy it up now. Marley gave a silent nod. I whispered. They never really learn. I walked over to her. And you? What are you standing at? I told them I agreed with you, she said after hesitating. I was astonished by that. And my dad told me to leave. Claimed that I didn't belong in their home if I wasn't going to provide for them like a real daughter. I gazed at her. Wait, you were expelled? Marley gave a shrug. I gathered my belongings and departed. At the moment, I am in a motel. I said, the hell you are, right away. Go gather your belongings. You intend to remain here. Marley appeared in disbelief. Are you serious? You already have too much on your plate. I put a hand on her shoulder and murmured, Marley, you're not them. I also don't abandon folks. She let out a breath, her eyes slightly watering. I'm grateful. The phone turned into a battlefield over the course of the following few days. Missed phone calls. Voicemails filled with anger and guilt. You're cruel. You lack gratitude. This family is being ruined by you. I didn't respond. Not once. Mom genuinely said, Bryce needs you. At the end of one voicemail. He is your brother. Yes, the same brother that made fun of me for missing out on Christmas dinner. The same person who said I wasn't required. Marley and I rapidly settled into a rhythm. She helped me paint the nursery, took the guest room, and carried food home without asking. Caleb was remarkably laid back about it. He even joked that we had become a strange sitcom trio. However, the tranquility was short-lived. I heard a car pull into the driveway on Saturday afternoon while Caleb and I were assembling the crib. I took a quick look through the blinds. Mom. Untidy hair? Swollen eyes? Shoulders slumped like a paper woman. Astonishing, I whispered. Rising from the Allen wrench, Caleb peered up. Do I need to hide? I chuckled to myself. Alluring. Like it owed her money, she banged on the door. I opened it, but I remained motionless to allow her entry. Ah, she said in a raw whisper. Please. I folded my arms. What are you looking for? Your dad. He remains unwell. Additionally, we risk losing the house if we fail to make the next payment. I remained silent. She dabbed at her face. We had faith in Bryce. We believed he would look after us. We were mistaken. I arched an eyebrow. You think? She raised her head, remorse shining in her eyes. We were not perfect. I am aware of that. You are our daughter, though. We require assistance. I didn't do it. You realize what's amusing? After a time, I said. You didn't spend the money I provided you for the house. As though it were his birthright, you gave it to Bryce. I'm the fallback option now that he has stopped talking. Once more. She broke down in tears. Please, Aya, I'm at a loss for what to do. I grinned, gently yet firmly. Work it out. She blinked. That's not what you mean. Yes. I began to shut the door. She lost her temper at that point. You owe us. I went cold. Pardon me? We brought you up. Fed you. Paid for your university education. Are you simply going to leave us when we need you now? I gave a chilly laugh. A daughter was not raised by you. A safety net was raised by you. A backup plan. And you know what? I now have my own family. My children come first. Anger curled her mouth. You resemble your father exactly. Perhaps. However, I'm not foolish enough to ruin my life for those who just come when they're in need of money. In her face, I closed the door. She let out a muffled, enraged cry outside. And then there was a loud bang. I sprinted over to the window. She had kicked my car's side. Then she drove away. Caleb gave me the Oscar-winning look. Are you all right? He inquired. I gave a nod. Better than good. I assumed it would end with the car kick and the door slam. Mom's outburst felt like the last scene of a play that had already been canceled without her realizing it. I thought perhaps, at last, they would retreat. However, my family doesn't die gracefully. Everyone inside the blast radius is gaslighted as they go down crying and kicking. My phone rang 3 days after the driveway incident. This time, Marley's name, not Mom's, was displayed on the screen. I replied. With a flat voice as if she already regretted being the messenger, she stated, They're trying to make a deal. I let out a sigh and sank into the chair in the living room. They certainly are. Now what? Instead of just giving them the money, they want to know if you would consider lending it to them. I burst out laughing. Marley went on, obviously reading from a script in his head. Or perhaps you could temporarily place the mortgage in your name, and they'll make monthly payments to you. Did they say that really? Verbatim. I turned to see Caleb folding little onesies in the nursery as if it were a holy rite. I squinted. I'm going to assume that Bryce hasn't replied to them yet. Number complete silence on the radio. His accounts are locked. They are looking into him. And when the heat got to him, his boyfriend abandoned him. I cocked my head. This year, karma is ahead of schedule. Marley remained silent for a while. Ah, they're afraid. Really afraid. They are unlike anything I have ever seen. Well, I stated plainly. They need to experience what it's like to be completely helpless. A pause occurred. Just to be sure, Marley said quietly, is there anything they could say to get your assistance? No. She let out a breath as if she had been clinging to a glimmer of hope for resolution. All right. Excellent. Since I informed them that I concur with you. I blinked. You told them? Hold on. Yes, she replied. I had had enough of acting. They treated you unfairly, I told them. That you were exploited. Perhaps none of this would have occurred if they had made even half the effort to help you that they did for Bryce. I remained silent for a moment. Something strange and unexpected clenched in my throat. And Dad lost it, she stated bluntly. Told me to pack my things and leave if I wasn't loyal to this family. I took a seat in front. What did you do too? I went out. I grinned, simultaneously feeling pleased and protective. Well done, girl. I was hoping they'd realize they pushed too far, Marley went on. That they would express regret. Mom attempted to call you again instead, accusing you of betraying them. I gave a sour laugh. They behave as though allegiance is worth money. As if, simply because they gave birth to us, we owe them unquestioning loyalty. Ah, they're falling apart. Everything, the home, the money. Even the way they look. At church, everyone is aware of Bryce. They feel ashamed. Let them feel ashamed. And then there was a knock. Over the phone, Marley heard it. Was that? Glancing through the slats, I made my way to the entrance. Bryce. Oh, you must be joking with me. Would you like me to remain on the line? Marley made the offer. I grinned. Number, this is the one I've been anticipating. I didn't bother to cover my face as I cautiously opened the door. Bryce had a terrible appearance. Not shaven. Cheeks that are hollow. Wearing a pricey jacket that no longer suited his shoulders properly. Ah, he muttered in a strained tone, can we have a conversation? I simply moved out of the way so he could enter without responding. He did not sit. Stood there in the center of my living room, his eyes flitting about as if he couldn't stand staring at me for too long. I made a mistake, he began. I'm not joking. He flinched. They said that I was the reason you stopped helping. No, Bryce. Because of them, I ceased to assist. You were simply the last straw. He swallowed hard and nodded. I had no idea they had given me your money. They simply stated that they had put it aside. If I knew, I wouldn't have accepted it. I extended a hand. Don't tell lies. You usually take it, therefore you would have taken it anyhow. That is how we differ from one another. You anticipate receiving a bailout. I anticipated surviving on my own. He winced. I am aware of my error. I lost everything. My work. My standing. I was taken advantage of by the guy I was seeing. Played me like a complete idiot. I shrugged and replied, I could have warned you. But at Christmas, I was too busy getting treated like trash. He shut his eyes. I'm worthy of that. You do, damn it right. Silence fell. I came to ask for help, he stated after giving me a serious look. I squinted. You're really brave. I'm not requesting money, he added hastily. I simply need somewhere to stay. Only for a short time, perhaps a week. I've been lounging on the couch and I'm at a loss for things to do. I blinked slowly. After everything, do you really think I'm going to take you in? There is nowhere else for me to go. I folded my arms. You possess them. There are those who gave you thousands without asking. The people who consistently picked you over me. They expelled me. My mouth fell open. Hold on, what? He gave a resentful nod. I told them I couldn't help with anything financially after I lost my job. After the whole incident with the company. And Dad simply lost it. I was dead weight, they said. Said that he ought to have disconnected me years ago. Then instructed me to get my belongings. I gazed at him. So, let me clarify something. The moment you received your promotion, they tossed me out, both financially and emotionally. They put all of their money on you. And they kicked you out when you failed? His jaw tensed as he nodded. They took advantage of me. Similar to how they took advantage of you. I gave him a serious look. At last, you understand, I muttered. Dejected, he stood there. He said, I'm not staying forever. All I need is somewhere to breathe. I looked back at my brother after glancing down the hallway where Marley was playing Uno with my children. All right, I replied. The couch is yours. No grievances. Have no expectations. I'll kick you out personally since you act entitled. He gave a quick nod. I won't. I promise. That evening, Bryce sat quietly on the couch as Marley cooked popcorn in the kitchen and Caleb adjusted the baby monitor. He was curled up with a blanket and had a look of humility on his face that I had never seen before. And I realized for the first time that I was no longer angry. I had just finished. I'm done being the backup. All the others have been held together. I'm done acting like self-respect was more important than blood. It was also pleasant. 3 months. That is the amount of time that has passed since I last spoke with my folks. No voicemails that make you feel guilty. Not at 11 p.m. crises. Not a drive-by drama. Nothing but quiet. And the beauty of that silence is beyond description. It's quiet in my house now. Marley's still here, but only temporarily. She's been saving up for her own apartment and already has a spot in mind. Bryce? He stayed for almost 2 weeks. The first few days were awkward, like two ex-rivals imprisoned in the same sitcom. But slowly, something altered. Without being asked, he began to assist. Got groceries. Cleaned the dishes. Even assisted Caleb in completing the crib. Baby clothes were folded like origami by the man who used to laugh in my face. That is what humility does to a person. One peaceful morning, he promised to call and left a thank you note. Strangely enough, he kept it. I get a text about once a week. Occasionally, it's just a meme. A check-in at other times. Although we are not close, we are now honest. That's a beginning, and me? I can breathe more easily. The baby will be born any day. Being a big sibling is something my oldest talks about as if it were a promotion. Caleb has never been more thrilled and worn out. I've made our house a haven for recuperating siblings, he quips. Perhaps I have. And perhaps that's all right. Something I didn't anticipate? They are not missed. Yes, I do miss the thought of them. The idealized portrayal of parents who love unconditionally, don't keep score, and wouldn't dump their daughter as soon as a more attractive model appeared. However, the authentic versions? The ones who repeatedly selected Bryce. Who viewed my assistance as a duty instead than a favor. I don't even miss them. One Saturday afternoon was the lone true surprise. When an unknown automobile drew up to the curb, Marley and I were enjoying some lemonade on the porch while assessing the neighborhood's gardening. A female emerged. Older, slim, anxious energy. Marley froze next to me and said, Mom. Really? I whispered. I believed we were finished. Slowly, as if expecting the ground to turn away, she ascended the trail. Without a grin or a greeting, I stood with my arms crossed. Ah, she uttered. Dry and strained voice. I must speak with you. I don't believe you do. If it weren't important, I wouldn't be here. When I needed you, you were never there. She took a swallow. Your dad is still ill. According to the physicians, stress is to blame. He is unable to stabilize his blood pressure. Our mortgage payments have been past due. And Bryce? Her voice trailed off. He's not returning. I gazed at her. In a whisper, she said. We gave him everything. Every penny we have saved. Our whole trust. We thought he would look after us. You had faith in him, I clarified. Not within me. She gave me a frantic look. We did something wrong. No, Mother. Forgetting to send a birthday card is an error. There was a pattern to everything you did. Her eyes filled with tears. The house is going to be lost. I gave a shrug. It sounds familiar. Her mouth quivered. Are you truly going to let us disintegrate? You did already, I responded quietly. It wasn't until the money stopped that you noticed. Shuddering, she took a step closer. We require assistance. I gave a headshake. You must assist yourself. Similar to what I have been doing for years. She gave me a blink. So that's it? Are you finished? As soon as you informed my children that they would not be seated at your table, I was done. That was like a kick to the stomach. She inhaled nervously. You were raised by us. Number expectations were raised by you. Yes, you fed me. I was housed by you. But you made me into an ATM with a heartbeat the moment I was able to breathe on my own. Her voice changed. You're being mean. I chuckled. It's funny. I used to believe that you only called when the rent was due and ignored my birthdays. She parted her lips to retaliate, then shut them. It was visible to me. That little flash of insight. She was unable to deny that glimmer of reality. With composure and finality, I said, I hope you figure things out. But I'm no longer your answer. I pivoted to enter. She took hold of my arm. One final desperate shot. Ah, we are your family. I gave her a stern, unflinching stare. Number this residence is occupied by my family. You are merely a former debtor of mine. I withdrew and went back inside. She didn't follow. A couple of days later, Marley entered the kitchen with her phone in her hand. You know what? She said. I arched an eyebrow. The house was put up for sale. I blinked. That quick? I suppose they had no other choice. I remained silent for a while. I just stirred my coffee. How are you feeling? She inquired. Free, I murmured. I meant it too. I occasionally ponder what would have happened if I had simply continued to make payments. If I had remained cheerful over yet another Christmas meal with my children seated at the foldable table and Bryce receiving the centerpiece. If I had told myself it wasn't so horrible and ignored that gut punch moment. However, I didn't. I got to my feet. And they were the ones left in the cold for the first time in my life.